what's going on here. All right, so I got 8:59 on my watch. I'm gonna call this meeting to order. And today we are working with just 3 members, Sturgis Dodge, Gene Lawson and Hoyte Decker. 59. But I think we've got enough to go forward. I have a draft set of minutes that I'd like to get a motion in a second. If someone would, please.
I move that we accept the minutes as written.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you very much. And so if we can get a vote, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, no. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and sign this. Down to business. Okay, correspondence, none. Organization, none. I don't see anybody in the audience right at the moment for citizens' comment. I will, assuming Ed comes back, we'll give him a shot if he's interested. But let's move on to old business. And what I'm interested in doing here is setting up a little bit of a program. I'd like to spend up to about an hour doing what I'm going to call preliminary discussion. We've had some further comments that have come in subsequent to my posting of this draft ordinance. But after that discussion, I'm intending to call for a motion and a second to submit this draft to the Board of Commissioners. And I'll, again, allow some time, about up to an hour maybe, for further discussion on the motion. We'll call for a vote. And then I'd like to spend the last amount of time talking about sending a memo, which I've also posted, to the Board of Commissioners describing what it is we're sending to them. Ed Chesnewski is in the audience, and I'll recognize him as being present. And Ed, if you would like to, we have a segment for citizen comment. If you're interested in saying anything, I'll give you that opportunity.
Thank you. Nothing right now.
Okay.
No.
And as we go, okay, so we're pretty informal here as we go through the process. Give us a chance to discuss some of these issues and questions that are being raised. But I'll give you an opportunity, or anybody else that is here, to provide comments as well. So, okay. What else do I need to do? I don't need to do anything else. What I would like to do, if I may, is to start with the comments that Gene Lawson has provided. I know, let's see, you gave me 2 sets of, so Sturgis, you gave me a set of notes, which much of this was incorporated in the draft that I posted. Is that correct?
No, this page here are comments on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, forgive me. Yeah. Later.
The other
Got
piece
it.
that I've
I
given you
wasn't
are
looking.
new things.
I got
are
it.
new
Yeah,
things.
no, this I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to get to you
Okay.
after I get to Gene.
Sure.
If that's okay.
No problem.
Excuse me. So, if I may, Gene, I'm happy to have you give us some opening remarks, but frankly, I've gone through what you provided, and I'm ready to go straight forward with this thing. I've got a few comments of my own. So how would you like to proceed? You want me to do that, or you want to make an opening statement, or?
No, there's no reason to make an opening
Okay.
statement. That's why.
Cool.
I did
Yeah,
mine.
let's keep this thing moving.
Better work.
The first item that you're providing a comment on is 253-1 findings and purpose. And frankly, in my opinion, this is going to be language that's going to be provided by the city attorney. I really, don't have any hard feelings one way or the other. I'm happy to drop that last sentence. I don't know, were you the one that drafted that? You or Susan?
Well, this is a carryover from the current code.
Okay.
And without that, there really isn't a purpose. In the current code, they
Okay.
have findings and purpose as separate categories.
Right.
This was Susan's
Yes. Consolidation.
consolidation.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
the only sentence on there that's a purpose is that last sentence.
Okay.
And like I said, it's current. It exists in the current code.
Right. So, Gene, how do you react to it?
Well, I basically react in the fact that this committee has no
Okay.
basis upon which to say what we
Okay.
said. So if we want to just let the commission do it, that's
So-
fine.
So are you asking Ann to post the comments that you provided here this morning?
It seems to me that anything that we use as a document
Right.
should be
Right.
posted.
And I
afterward.
guess that's my point with respect to Gene's.
Yeah,
I'm happy to
Gene's-
post yours
mean,
as well, have
Gene should
have
be-
Ann post yours.
I believe
And
that's.
so the commissioners will have an opportunity to, and frankly, just turning up the page a little bit at the corner as we move forward, I'm interested in offering some of my thoughts on what we're about to submit to the Board of Commissioners, but I, like you guys, also have some concerns that I want to express. But we'll make that part of the record and move it forward to the Board of Commissioners, and it will appear in the minutes. So, okay? If we're good with that? Gene, you good with it? Okay, great. All right. So the second item I have is actually 253-2 applicability, and you have, Gene, you have altered some of the language, and I'm okay with it. And so unless, okay, there you go. All right, next item, caliper, definition of caliper. I'm pretty comfortable with your changes as well, but what I would say is, in fact, let me just read it. The diameter of a newly planted tree measured at 6 inches above the ground when, I'm adding, such tree is less than 4 feet, and an existing tree measured at 12 inches above the ground when it is, that's my added language, 4 feet or more above the ground.
I'd like to really kind of hear Liz, but one of the things that I did in just kind of trying to figure out how to respond to Gene's question is I went back to some notes that Liz had provided us with earlier.
Yep.
And she had this, let me
Yes,
just
she
read
did.
this to you. This is what she had in one of her notes of a way to do this. The diameter of a nursery tree trunk measured at 6 inches above the ground. When caliper exceeds 4 inches, it is measured at 12 inches above the ground. Is that what that is? And I think that's clearer because here you're not sure whether it's 4 feet in height, 4 feet in diameter, or 4 feet, yeah.
Well, this
4
is
feet caliper or 4 inches. It's unclear.
well, it's incorrect.
It's
Really, to get right down
it is
to it.
incorrect.
Yeah,
So
it's incorrect.
It's what I
As it is.
read.
Is correct. Which I don't know where the miscommunication comes because we've talked about this a bunch of times. I feel like, but it must have just gotten lost in translation. But the other option besides what you read is just to say 6 inches and just make it
The
6 inches all
diameter of
across.
a newly planted tree measured at 6 inches above the ground.
Yeah,
Period.
because remember we're lowering the planting size to 2 inches.
Right.
So people are not going to be spending, you know, if it's $150 for a 2-inch tree, they're not going to be spending $700 for a 4-inch. That just doesn't.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to say it'll ever happen, but it just
Okay.
seems unimportant to the purpose.
All right, would you?
So technically correct is the first one you read
Okay.
of mine.
Okay.
If we want to simplify it, it's
Yeah,
just
I would
6
like to
inches.
simplify it, so if that's acceptable to
Fine.
you,
Yeah, fine.
and that's acceptable to you, Gene?
Well, and this will cut down on the issue, like the contractors mainly know now, but like as a homeowner, if you're calling and trying to find a 3-inch tree right now, they're going to send you a 3-inch tree at 6 inches off the ground. So
Okay.
if I measure it, it might not be 3 inches at 12.
So would you state that language again, slowly, with feeling?
Well, I think it's the diameter of a newly planted tree
Measured at 6 inches.
above the ground.
Period.
Oh, period. Oh, okay then. So I'm just gonna nuke the rest of that. All right. Excellent. All right. So DBH, next item. Gene has added, or excuse me, altered the term to say when required, rather than to be used, and I'm okay with that.
So,
I don't see why you need any of it. Just put a period after above the ground. Why do we need to say for tree pruning plans or removal?
well, that's true. It's just,
DBH
it's
is
a measurement.
It's an industry term. You can like
Okay.
Google it. It's it's
But
not
the
something
only
we're.
reason that I had a question was because of the fact that it originally had to be used for tree permitting.
Okay.
Which restricted it
So,
to that purpose.
so you would be good with a period after above the ground?
Yeah.
No, I mean Gene.
I guess that the purpose of it is to be
Yeah.
used other purposes rather than
Okay.
just tree permitting.
All right.
Yeah, because we have two measurements, caliper and DBH.
Yeah.
So they're used
So-
when appropriately defined.
All right, very good. All right, next item, line tree.
Landscape.
What?
Is inert new? Was that yours
Oh,
or
excuse me.
Gene's?
Oh, I didn't even see that. Look
Yeah,
at that.
one little word.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I must have missed when this came into, why is the tree code dealing with coverage, rocks and walls and fences?
Because it's landscaping.
We're
It's,
defining landscape.
to me, it's not, but
I
I have no
agree.
ability, but I have no ability to enforce anything to
So,
do with walls and rocks.
So if you will, and this is kind of, I'm glad you raised your concern about it, because I have basically the same concern. But rather than, I mean, we've worked hard to get to this, and there is validity in what, this might be more Susan than you, I forget, was proposed. And so I'm willing to vote yes on this, but I'm going to offer my, comments about that particular language
Yeah, I just,
later, as, once we get into a motion on this thing, so.
yeah, I'm just very confused about how we're taking things from the zoning code and now sticking them in here and confusing those definitions in the zoning code, because in the zoning code, it's the natural trees, plants, natural mulch, and now here we're grouping them in with
Right.
stuff that would count as coverage.
Right.
That seems
Well,
like it'll create a lot of problems.
I think there's some interest in maybe examining that aspect of 270. Gene, is that fair to say?
Well, that's probably true.
Right. All right, well, so, I mean, I'm happy to have inert in there. I've been
I am too,
inert
if we-
for quite a while
There we
anyway, so.
go.
You?
Okay.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
okay with the
All right.
inert if we decide to keep
Okay,
the,
so I'm
that
putting an
part of
okay
it.
by that. All right. Now line tree. And so Gene is offered again some alternate language on this, and I'm okay with that as well.
I am too.
And you are too,
Shouldn't it
okay.
be
Would
two
you
or
like me to
more?
read it?
No, shouldn't it be two or more?
Well,
We have lime trees that are on 4 properties in the corner.
Yeah, actually,
2 or more adjoining properties.
Yeah, we had one
Yes.
not long ago. It was a huge tree. It was on 4 properties right in the corner.
Got
It wasn't a removal, but
2 or more.
Mm-hmm.
Gene?
That's fine, yeah.
should it be properties or should it be lots?
Okay, I'll do lots.
I don't know.
Let's be consistent. We're
Probably.
talking
Could a
pretty much
property be
lots.
made
We're
up
talking,
of more
we're
than
talking
one
property
lot?
owners, but when we talk
Yeah.
about the land itself, we're talking about lots, so.
I don't know, but it's definitely worth consideration.
I'm open.
Because what if somebody
Yeah.
owns like 3 lots in a row and he says, well, it's all my property, but they're actually subdivided lots.
All right, we'll leave,
Lots, I don't
we'll
know.
Food for
leave
thought.
property. We'll leave
Food for thought.
Well,
property.
I'm just gonna put lots in question.
What?
I'm good, I'm just for this.
Well,
I mean, we don't use
hey,
property
this
anywhere
is-
else, do we?
I'm making a final addition here, so,
Mhm.
you know,
I think Liz makes a good point for saying lots.
okay. I'm happy
We
to
don't have
say-
lots, we don't have lots defined.
Do we have properties defined?
No.
No,
Is lots defined, can we use definitions like in the zoning code if it's defined? Like, that's the way the
yeah,
current
actually,
tree
we
code.
rely on that later.
Yeah, the
Only if
current,
we reference them.
Yeah.
yeah, so, I don't think it defines, I could be wrong, I'm not the zoning code expert, but I know it defines lot.
Right. So we'll use lots. Okay then. All right. Boom. So,
Down in natural area, what is the below native tree? What is permitted permeable landscaping?
That
so we
is,
decided at the last meeting that constitute things like these pavers,
But
and somebody suggested there is actually concrete that allows water or
yeah,
fluids to pass
there's
through
all
it.
kinds of, well, yeah, like our parking lot, we
So,
have
I
it.
mean, that's,
But natural area in the zoning code, that's coverage. That's not natural area. Natural tree, plants, mulch, grass.
those are the only things that are permitted.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
and-
this is directly contradicting that.
So, yeah, I think this is just an expression of kind of our collective ignorance about what the zoning code says. And the
well,
thought
actually,
that,
and I'm open to your suggestion, Liz. I mean, I'm putting that term in, I'm the guy that's responsible for putting the term in there. Huh?
I help.
You want some credit too?
Go ahead, yeah,
Okay.
I was gonna say some
You
of the
can-
Where's
blame.
some blame?
I'll take the credit, yeah, you can have
I'll
the
take
blame. There you
Okay.
go. And that is, it's my attempt at trying to identify where the planting of trees would be permissible or practical or possible.
But it wouldn't, I mean, it wouldn't be in a paver or permeable.
No, I'm sorry. I'm only talking about the term natural area. The purpose in using it here. And actually, that definition goes further than what I originally had because I wasn't even considering that permeable. If you have a thought.
I'm wondering if what we were looking at doing with this natural area was to somehow to distinguish it from buildable area. And so we ended up including everything that might be on
Well,
area that's not buildable.
at the end of the day, it doesn't really, I mean, I can read you the zoning code definition. Natural area, that portion of the gross lot area that is dedicated to either trees, grass, flowers, bushes, or other plantings and or mulched areas. And then it goes on to talk about, for the purpose of calculating natural area, mulched areas shall be limited to the use of vegetative ground covers and shall not include the use of clamshells, decorative stone, or other similar hard materials. So we can't have a definition that contradicts theirs at the end of the day.
So would you recommend that we use the exact language that is in the 270?
I don't see how you can't.
Okay.
Unless you change natural area to something else
All right.
and use your definition.
All right, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna cross out that entire sentence. And make a note to substitute.
Now, in general, would we refer back to 270-4 or would we just essentially copy and paste?
I'm gonna copy it.
Copy and paste. I prefer just people have it from
in front of them, yeah, instead of having to click to open the link.
Does that have 270.4?
270-4 definitions.
Yeah, but does it, it's just defined, okay.
Yeah, definitions.
All right.
And it lists them. It's alphabetical order.
Okay. All right. So I'm now down to 3 and 4. And so I'm going to turn this one over to Eugene. Gene's comment is that these items 250, excuse me, the definition of protected tree, items 3 and 4 have.
There are prohibitions against use with no exceptions.
I'm sorry?
There are prohibitions against use with no exceptions. So that, to me, is taking. It could create financial problems for the city.
Can, Gene, is, if, just to be clear,
Okay.
what you're saying, it's telling folks what they can or can't do with trees, and you're kind of saying with no exceptions on those items. Okay.
Deprives the owner of the land of the use of the land, basically.
Okay, so I guess my reaction to this is why, and the reason behind my question why is because the current language, though not identical, has similar provisions. In the current language, it's 6 inches, an existing tree of 6 inches or more. An existing tree of 3 inches caliper, which is kind of in conflict, but nevertheless. So, I mean, if it's working now, why isn't it working with the changes that I'm proposing?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at 3, Gene, I mean, I don't think you were here when we proposed this, and this is something that Pete and I think Susan,
Right.
you know, kind of put forward. And the idea was, this is sort of currently in the code, and I don't know the section, you know, inside and out, but there's a prohibition for clear cutting. And this is kind of the closest that we have addressed that. And essentially what the desire was here was that a desire to not have treed lots cleared in the buildable area until there was a plan for what was going to be built there.
That would be fine if that's what it said. That isn't what this says.
Okay, that's what the language is trying to do.
So how do we need to fix that to satisfy you?
Well, she has the exception in there. If it's applicable to have a building permit put on the piece of property and that would allow the tree to be cut down, that's the exception. That's not here.
Okay, we thought it was. That a protected tree is any existing tree, currently we're saying 15 inches or more, located anywhere on an unimproved lot for which a building permit has not been issued or is not pending. So essentially what that says, if you turned it around to the positive, you would say, you know, where a building permit is pending or has been issued.
What is a pending building permit?
Yeah, I have a little problem
I don't understand what
I
that
have a
is.
little problem with the pending.
It's either unreviewed or it's
reviewed.
approved.
If it's pending,
There-
it hasn't been reviewed for the tree plan.
We don't
part
have
of
pending.
it.
There is no pending.
There's no such thing. Thank you.
There's like 3 statuses. It's either been submitted, yet to be reviewed.
Right.
It's been reviewed and is now being issued,
Right.
or it's been reviewed and there are problems and we're waiting for changes.
Would you be comfortable with a submitted? in place of pending?
It's the same
What's the point?
difference.
I
What's the
mean, people
point?
submit things all the time that don't go through,
But
so
they
now
shouldn't
we're,
have the right to go
unprotecting
and
the
cut
trees.
down trees if nothing, if a tree, because essentially when the building permit's submitted, it comes with a tree plan.
Mhm.
And then that says, okay, you can now take these trees down in this area.
And if
Um,
you start issuing permits before that, the city will have no opportunity to review and recommend any changes.
Right.
I just recommended one a couple weeks ago and they ended up taking my advice and now we're gonna be saving a 40-inch white oak.
Got it.
I mean, it doesn't happen all the time,
Right,
but
right,
we're giving up that ability.
right.
And a lot of times it's not people trying to remove trees necessarily, it's just that architects don't go out and like really study the property and like, oh, this is a unique tree, let me
Right.
design around.
Right,
They
no.
just slap down their design on paper.
Got it. So, I mean, so Jean, if we dropped or is not pending, how it would read, and I know it's awkward because it's kind of negative, but what it says is that any existing tree, 15 inches or more, located anywhere on an unimproved lot for which a building permit has not been issued. So essentially what it's saying is that you have to, before you can go cut down trees of any size anywhere on your lot, you have to have a plan, a building permit submitted and a plan.
Why are 2 and 3 separate? Why don't we just make them one thing?
Because one has to do with sort of a vacant lot.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to get at,
And-
is unimproved property.
Is an unimproved lot, a lot that doesn't have
They're
anything,
trying to protect trees
on it.
on unimproved property.
So
That's
people
what's
don't
going
go
on.
and just clear cut the anticipated building footprint and then leave it that way for years. And sort of,
I mean, I get what 3 is doing. I just don't understand the point of 2, like why 3 couldn't encompass 2. Because a building permit would be issued for an accessory, like a shed or something like that.
because, well, three is specific to an unimproved lot.
So what's your, Liz, what's your reaction to the concept of protecting trees on unimproved lots? I mean,
How many unimproved lots do we have?
Well, we have.
Well, no,
Well,
no,
you
just-
could subdivide these, some of
Yes.
these things could subdivide and then they
Yeah.
would become.
Mhm.
So if this was me and I was trying to figure out a way around it, I'd say, well, why would I subdivide my 7-lot property? And instead I'll just remove all the trees on it and then I'll subdivide it.
Well, let me throw out a
Because there are other,
suggestion. Maybe
I mean, there
this
are other things that
might
protect the
help
other
you.
trees on it.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So my thought is, why don't we just worry about protecting trees and not worry about what land or lot, property, whatever they're on?
Kind of how I
Huh?
feel. That's how I feel. I don't understand why we didn't just
So, I mean,
pick a
let's-
size.
So when we started out some months ago, I was protecting any tree over 10 inches. But there's been
We
a
talked about
suggestion, yeah,
between
there's
8
been
and 12.
suggestion to protect trees 15 inches and not forget,
Well-
and then we're getting into 24 inches.
In the 8
So-
to 12, I think I got the 12 inches from, and it's hard to calculate it, from DC. They do theirs in circumference, it's a little different, but it starts somewhere around that 12 to 14 range.
Okay. It was a point at which.
Can I ask a very
By all means, by all means.
simple
No,
question?
you need to come stand up here, or at least take the microphone back to your seat since nobody
Not
else
even
is
sure.
probably gonna use it.
Just sit in your chair with the
Is
microphone.
this on, Ann?
Edward Chnusky. I guess from a very simple standpoint, why not just restrict any removal of trees on a unimproved lot until a building issue has been approved at some time?
That's what this is trying to say.
I think in a more complicated way.
By putting the size on it,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah,
But again, I'm cutting it off even before your suggestion, Ed, and that is, let's just say we're gonna protect trees and not worry about what type of lot it's on. So again, what I would say here is any tree over, whatever the language is, any existing tree 15 inches or more, period. And then, I'm sorry, we could scratch 3. We could scratch 3 entirely.
I think we could also scratch 4, but then we're getting ahead
Well,
of my notes.
yeah.
We're getting ahead to,
Yeah,
I still think we should just choose one size and just, that's it.
okay.
That's the simplest, most equitable thing.
All right. So would you be willing to scratch 3 and 4?
I would.
You would?
I want to take
Sure.
4, I wanted to take 4 out.
Okay. right.
Because,
Are you all right with that, Gene?
Sure.
yeah,
All right.
but I want to revisit, when.
Oh, we will.
When we
Yeah,
get to
we're-
it, I
yeah.
want to revisit
okay.
2.
All right, so.
Now,
I'm gonna-
are we modifying 2 then?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, we may revisit this. All right, so I am deleting protected tree 3 and 4. All right. Very good. All right. All right, tree topping. Do we need to say something about utilities here?
I don't think so.
I was just gonna add, I mean, there is language, I forget where.
It's
270,
253.
excuse me, 253 7D 1 and 253 10C2 provide, you know, the restrictions or requirements with regard to, I forget what the language was, utility
Yeah.
work, changes, whatever kind of thing. You want to take a quick look at that, Gene, and see if that will satisfy 253 7D1 and then 253 10C2.
Well, the reason that I put the question in was not because I wanted to create a problem, but the fact that I wanted to be pointed out that utilities, public utilities have state statutory authority to do stuff that this code's not gonna be able to do anything about.
But do we need to state that?
Well,
No, well, we're talking about a definition, so,
Yeah.
but didn't you say we exempted them somewhere?
Yeah,
Didn't we?
Yeah.
did.
It's
If you
one.
go to 253,
It's in either 7 or 10. I forget.
7D1,
7D1, topping is prohibited unless exempted due to hazards associated with utility lines or storm damage. That's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, because they're federally mandated to maintain safe lines, so theoretically, well, in actuality, they can do whatever they want. Is really what it comes down to.
that's true.
So, but
You
no,
can't
that-
talk them out of it from doing it.
that answers the question.
Okay. All right, I'm moving on. So this, we're down to the city arborist, and so, good news, bad news. I like your language, Gene, about explicitly referenced in this chapter. The term limited, and this is, I'm playing Gene here, seems not very clear to me. So,
Don't assume she can do anything else, is how I read that.
but is it like a legal definite? I mean,
yeah, I mean,
Well,
what's
it's
your,
like, inspection and permitting is used also to delineate powers of building inspectors.
okay.
Okay, okay.
And the purpose of this was to limit it to the tree ordinance.
I got it.
So limited to trees is what you're talking
Well,
about?
yeah, that's why I put
Okay.
explicitly referenced in this chapter.
Okay,
Uh-huh. Got it.
all right.
I think
I
that's
can
a
go
good-
with that.
That's a good catch.
yeah, I don't want to have any more inspection or permitting.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
for sure.
All right. Okay. All right, Now, I'm down at 253.5, Tree Ordinance Commission, C, and your question is by whom?
And I think that's actually answered later, but
Okay.
I just think it's,
I think-
in that case, a way of
Yeah.
not, of putting it in the wrong place where you put it in there before you actually decide who's gonna do it.
I think the current code may say something like by any affected party or
Yeah.
something to that. I think that's what.
Well, this one does say it later,
Yeah.
but,
Well, do you want me to add? I'm happy to add by any affected party.
no, I'm not sure that it needs to be
Okay.
that as much as
Okay.
maybe when we finish it up, we need to move the sections around so that they flow.
Well, again, this is a,
I'd be.
I'm reluctant to start messing with that appeals.
Yeah, I'd rather just
provision.
stick by any affected
Yeah.
party here and risk duplicating.
It's only
Because it's
So
a
I'm
couple of
I'm
words.
just
I
gonna
should
leave,
say 3 words.
Yeah.
leave it as is.
No, by any affected party. I would add by any affected party.
Single party. Okay, all right. And then your comment at the end, your reasoning on that, Gene?
Well, the reasoning about the building inspector's authority is that his authority is state,
Okay.
is state mandated.
Right.
And we can't, by this ordinance, overrule that authority. And city manager is certainly not controlled by this, neither is
So,
variances, I think, is something that's solely within the province of the Board of Adjustment.
Would we be able to just do a simple word change from variance to like exemption or something like that?
I don't like
Or
this.
relief? Or is that
Is it
just,
just sort of,
Relief, I'm,
just,
that's got some wiggle.
yeah, but it may
I
be
don't
just calling it a different thing. It's still, if we change the word, the function is still pretty much the same. Because Gene doesn't believe that the Tree Ordinance Commission can authorize variances to, I think, any of the city code. Is that accurate, Gene? Did you-
Right, well, it's
that-
because
Dan
of the
can't hear you speaking.
because of what a variance does. A variance makes you do
Right.
something that is against the rules.
Yeah, yeah. And you feel that is a power vested only in the Board of Adjustment?
I do believe that, yes.
Uh-huh. I honestly don't know, but I certainly think that's something.
So here's what I would like to do. I'm open to, Liz, your thought on it?
I don't know if only
Okay.
the Board of
So-
Adjustments
so
allowed to
here's-
do that.
Here's what I would like to do, if I may. And again, I kind of teased you about this in my response to you, Gene. And I'm in the same boat on some of these issues too. I would like to leave this as is. And then when we get to a motion, allow you to express your concern about state law and the building inspector's authority. Would you be okay with that?
Well, it depends on how we're gonna put our dissents.
It's gonna be, I'm gonna have, basically, I'm gonna quote you what your concerns are for the purposes of the minutes.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important to have just what your position is on this thing, so.
Do we, I'm just sort of wondering if it should be anywhere other than the minutes. I know,
We don't have any.
with previous code, I'm just saying in previous, with previous codes, when the planning commission presented it to the mayor and commissioners, part of their cover letter, preamble, whatever, was kind of saying, we're not sure this goes far enough, but we didn't feel comfortable doing, putting this in code, or, I mean, they kind of, or these are some other recommendations that we feel the mayor and commissioners need to see. I mean, we could always say, we can just say, we're not sure whether this is legally, doable, and hope the city attorney can.
Well, I mean,
Make a judgment of that.
it's my intention
He's
to
gonna
move this
anyway.
forward.
I know, I
okay?
hear you, I absolutely
And
hear
so in order to do that, to accomplish
you. Got
that,
it, got it.
I feel it's, what's the difference? If you want to do an
Right.
additional memo or put it in the minutes, I don't see the
This
difference
is,
here.
well, this is just my kind of process. I'm kind of thinking ahead. I mean, hopefully by the end of working through this, what I'm hearing you say, you're going to ask for us to vote on it.
Yes, I am.
And should Jean or I, or even you, have substantial, problems with some of this,
Right.
we may feel that we need to vote it down.
I understand that.
So I'm just sort of looking at,
Sure.
what mechanisms there would be to approve it,
Right.
but to in some way,
Right.
qualify
understand.
our,
I
full
understand.
endorsement of every
I
point.
understand.
Well,
That's all. I'm
But
saying.
remember, like, the commissioners are gonna review this probably on end. The city solicitor will have to review
Right,
it.
right.
The public, so
I
And
got
so,
it.
I mean, that's a good point.
Yeah,
But
I mean-
I will also add,
Yeah.
as I've said to you in an email or something, and I'll
Uh-huh.
say it to Gene because I haven't said it to him, and I'll put it on the record so that Susan and Pete will know about it, because we'll put this in the minutes as well. And that is that I would welcome participation at the commissioners' workshops by any or all of you to express your personal
Yeah.
perspectives on some of it. I mean, this is very nuanced, man.
Yeah.
We all have a little different take,
Got it.
on this,
That's-
so,
I'm cool with it.
good.
Or, my suggestion is when you go to do the motion and take a vote,
Mhm.
each of you state your reasons. of
Exactly,
why.
that's
for
exactly what
sure.
I'm gonna do.
For sure.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Yeah. All right, thank you, Ann. All right, where am I? Minimum density requirements. Okay, so Gene, you're talking about there are multiple commercial zones. In my mind, this applies to all of them. So that's why I didn't identify individual districts or
But
whatever.
you did individually mention all residential zoning.
I'm sorry?
You did
Mention the
individually mention all the
residential
residential zoning
ones.
districts.
So would you prefer that I put specific language
Well,
in
they
there?
should be the same. I mean, you should either
Okay.
list them all or not list them all.
All right,
What do you got, 1, 2, and 3? Do we have?
I don't know,
C?
but I'm gonna go to 270 and
Okay,
do that, so hang on. Hang on. And in fact, while I'm doing that, let's move on to the next issue, because that gets us into the natural area. And Gene, my comment for you there is to look at D, 253.6D, and see if that helps you out at all.
I mean, the thing is, I guess what I'm saying, I don't wanna talk over folks if they're reading, but, I mean, natural area, I honestly don't know where in the code commercial, natural area requirements apply in commercial districts, but I do know that natural area requirements apply to use regardless of what zone they're in. Which includes commercial. Yeah, I mean, it does say used residentially where natural area requirements apply. And that's, I think, I'm wondering if that answers your question, Gene, because you're saying it's not clear to you where they apply in any commercial zone, but if there's residential use, I believe natural area requirements do apply. Is that not accurate, Liz?
Is what?
That natural area requirements apply to residential use of
Yes.
properties?
So if you have a commercial lot and you build a single family home on it, you
Right.
have to adhere. There's
Right.
there's one on Lake Avenue, a couple down from Starbucks.
Or if
built
you
last
have
summer.
commercial and you build apartments on it.
Well, I've not been here when we've had any
The Arc,
apartments.
the Arc is a great example of that.
Well, the ARC,
Yeah, yeah.
the ARC is. Mhm.
It's 100% lot coverage.
There is.
There's no natural area requirements there.
They're not, because it's commercial, but I also think the building of that preceded the tree growth.
Oh, it probably did. You know,
Yeah.
working-
Oh, yeah.
Because currently in place, it would dictate 2 trees per unit, which
Right, currently
obviously.
it couldn't be built.
Well, I could not be done. Yeah.
We can leave it like it is, and I could just raise the
Okay.
question. and-
All right.
Okay.
So I would propose going back up the line above that. Just as I did with any lot zoned R1S, R1, R2, you drop down, any lot zone C1, C2, C3, commercial. Okay? Okay.
Mhm.
All right, what about utility easements? Yeah, what about them? Again, I think we've addressed this in those, wherever those other sections were.
253.
253-7D1 and 253-10C2. So I feel pretty comfortable about that.
Have we moved on to 5?
I don't know, are you okay with that then?
Which,
The easements, utility easements?
no. I was just thinking about my own.
Narrowing it down.
I was thinking about my own residence where it's residential R2. There's a 10-foot utility easement across the whole front of the lot because we've got underground lines. That means the entire setback is in the utility easement.
Okay.
You can't put any trees there.
Yeah, I hear you. Could we just say, except where utility easement prevent the planting, or at least one? Or some language to that effect? I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Yes, that'd be fine.
Okay. All right. Clean that up just a little bit, Sturgis. This is gonna be
Okay,
after the.
At least one of the trees satisfying, like, shall be in the frontage of the, unless the planting is prevented by
Okay,
a
wait a
utility.
second. So instead of a
But why would a
semicolon, you gotta do a comma.
Yeah, go
What-
ahead, Liz.
Sorry, what utility easement?
Jean,
What is
So
is
he
it
was talking
gas?
about underground,
No, it's
underground.
It's what?
The underground electric wires.
So, and who tells you you can't put anything in there?
The easement does. Because the roots of a tree would wreak havoc to an electric line.
Well, that's not quite, I mean, but if the easement, if that's what it said, like, so it would be through Delmarva Power then in town?
In this case, it was the Delmarva Power, yes.
That's interesting. I've never, I mean, 4 years, I've never had that as a problem here, but that doesn't mean it couldn't
At least one
be.
front yard setback.
Well,
I'm gonna suggest,
where we put underground lines in for the first time.
Yeah, the utility easement would strictly forbid any planting of anything besides grass and flowers, I guess?
Well, it doesn't say that, it just basically says that nothing that would impede the access of the utility to the electric lines.
Oh, well, that wouldn't be, so, I mean, I could very easily contact Delmarva Power, but, I mean, if it's a 10-foot easement in an R2, you would just plant it on the edge. I mean, you think about it, when you're digging, you only need, what is it, Delaware, 24?
so,
Might be less here.
I'm gonna suggest some specific language, which
Yeah.
I think would leave the door open for what you're talking about. And that would
Common
be simply
sense.
to add, subject to utility easement restrictions.
Yeah, and I mean, especially if it's 10 feet and they have to plant the tree at 12
Yeah.
feet,
Yeah.
it
So,
still
I mean,
serves the
that's what-
purpose
that's
of the
my
front
point.
yard tree.
You can plant it on the edge, you know,
Yeah.
subject to their restrictions. You okay with that? Gene?
Yeah. I do.
Yeah, because if Delmarva Power doesn't want anything there,
Okay.
I like that.
All right. 2 high canopy trees, together or separately?
Well, obviously, the intent was to be together. I mean, I don't
Well,
even
mean,
know,
let's-
I don't
let's-
even know,
let's
I don't
see
even
what
know
Gene's-
how they would exist
See what Gene's
separately.
concern is here.
Well, do they count as one line tree for both lots or for each lot? In other words,
Yes.
Is it a half a lot?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, 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 yeah.
And I'm gonna get back to that later.
Uh-huh.
But the answer is yes. So, you know, moving away from the language here, the concept is to have, if there are 2 trees on a lot line, okay,
Both sides get to use it.
both sides will use it.
Yeah, both sides could use two.
And that gets them 1 minimum density requirement tree.
Actually gives them two. It gives each of them
Well,
one.
that's true.
Yeah,
That's
each
right.
lot gets
That's
one.
right.
Each lot gets one out of the two.
Okay?
Do we
All right.
need another word
I don't think we do.
for the meaning?
I don't think we
I
do.
don't think we do.
All right. 253.7, maintenance. Again, Gene's suggested some language changes, and I'm okay with those. How about you?
I'm okay with them, but I need, there's just a language thing that doesn't make
Okay.
sense to me.
All right,
This is the way I rewrote it.
okay.
Failure of property owners to maintain trees and landscapes as required may, after written notice, lead to civil penalties as provided in 253-15.
Lead to the assessment of?
Well, he took the assessed out. He said lead to as
Yeah, but what he's saying
lead
is,
to the assessment of. Okay. Does that make sense?
But the assessment doesn't mean collection.
Ah,
sorry?
Assessment doesn't mean collection.
Oh, I know.
okay.
Oh, no. We're going back to,
Lead to so lead to civil penalties if that is provided, and/or required, and/or a requirement, as opposed to and/or required, as provided in 253-15.
all right. I'm sorry. Let's
Okay.
go back. So we're gonna go with lead to. Everybody's good with that,
Lead
right?
to civil
And then
penalties,
253-15 and/or
and/or a requirement
requirement.
to reimburse the city.
a requirement.
Meant to reimburse
E-N-T,
the
a
city.
requirement to reimburse the city,
Uh-huh.
blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Yes,
All right. It's in there.
okay.
All right. Tree protection.
but I think we need to look at this more. I think there's a lot of problems with this.
Tree
maintenance.
protection?
No, I haven't gotten there.
With,
Maintenance.
with,
was
okay,
maintenance.
the whole section.
Well, number one, we're talking about landscapes again. I really don't think you guys thought out what it means to say the city is responsible for all trees, gravel, rocks, pavers, and everything located on city
I
property.
agree.
I think that deserves a lot more thought and consideration. And I think we need to think about how we're gonna enforce ivy, wisteria, and other vines maintained so as not to harm trees.
Ooh,
Am
I did that for you. I
No,
put
you didn't.
wisteria
You
in
did
there
it.
just for
You
you.
did it for me.
But who's gonna go around
She's-
enforcing this?
Why, you are.
The enforcement officer.
You're gonna be the
Okay, thank you, Ed.
You're gonna be the wisteria doctor.
The wisteria was the one she brought up to say, do you
Ivy's
really
not the
want the
only one.
city to go to that lovely little house
All right.
over near the cemetery
Mhm.
and tell them to
Yep.
cut their wisteria
Because it can't just be
out of
the
top of
wisteria
the
that
tree.
I don't like or you don't like.
Right.
If somebody calls in and complains about wisteria,
All right,
somebody calls and
Coach.
complains about that house, we gotta go and write them up.
All right, Coach, fix it.
Who's coach now?
She's the
I
coach.
don't know, I mean,
She's the coach. We're the players.
it's not that I necessarily disagree with it, I'm just,
Is this the kind?
I don't know if it was fully
So
considered.
with respect to
understood.
landscaping, again, I would rather not spend time going back and forth on this, but rather just express my concerns when we get to a motion, okay? But with regard to some of this other stuff, you know, if you have some changes you'd like to suggest.
If we change landscape to eliminate the hard surface stuff, then
Well,
that
let me
takes
ask you
away-
guys,
that
so
takes
if
away-
yesterday, so
Uh-huh.
on the weekend, somebody went out and planted a bunch of Leland cypress, weeping willows, and pears in a city park
somebody did
or
that?
adjacent to their house.
Did they do this?
No, just
Oh,
say
you're
they
saying
did.
this is a
Say they went out and planted it
whatever.
right in front of their house, and they're poorly planted, half dead, and then they call me and say that, you know, they all need to be removed. So the city is going to go take care of that. That's what this says to me. And likewise, say 20 years. So likewise, say 20 years ago you planted a southern magnolia. And
They'll
this
be
is-
subject to a civil penalty, but
Well,
you still have to take the time.
it says they're not allowed to do that.
But it's done. It's been done.
Yeah.
We'll
And
say,
so they're gonna be
okay, so-
assessed a civil penalty.
so say 20 years ago,
That
somebody
will lead to
planted
it.
a magnolia tree on city property before anybody cared about any of that.
Right.
And they have lovingly pruned and maintained and shaped and fertilized and spent thousands of dollars caring for this lovely tree. And then we're doing street tree pruning, and I say, well, it's on city property, so we're pruning it. Whether or not we do a good or bad job is irrelevant. They're gonna be upset.
But you have the right to do that.
We have a right to, but
Uh-huh.
that doesn't mean if I go down a line for street tree pruning and see somebody's maintaining a tree in an unimproved right of way, I'm not gonna just go in and randomly prune it.
Gotcha.
You know, I just, what if this doesn't address, what if a tree falls from private property onto the city road? Who's responsible for cleaning it up? What if a tree from city property falls onto private property?
What does the current code say?
Nothing, that's the point.
About
This should
either
be
one
solving
of
it.
them.
And so to your point, I mean, we've actually discussed this at an earlier meeting, because, when was it, late last year, when there was that storm, a major tree limb came down on a private property tree across the street from my house. And, there was a tree down, I wanna say St. Lawrence, it was a street tree that also had a tree limb that came down and hit a car, actually landed on a car.
No, that was a private property tree.
Was that private property?
Mhm.
Okay. Well,
And
anyway.
we should never touched it.
Yeah, but you did,
Not me,
and.
not on my advice.
I didn't say you.
Well, that,
Yeah, I guess I did say you. But anyway, the city cleaned up the tree across the street from me, and from what I understand, they also removed the tree from the limb from the car down in St. Lawrence.
I mean, I don't have a problem with, and Liz has talked to us about this before, I don't have a problem with trying to put some language in here to address what Liz thinks
well, and
about both of those situations.
what about tree damage to infrastructure? So what if a private or a public tree is damaging a sidewalk? What if a private tree is damaging city water lines? What if a public tree is damaging sewer line?
There were guys doing maintenance work down on Byard this morning at Laurel. And I stopped and told them about the problems we have on Laurel Street with tree roots
Yeah.
in the water line, in the sewer lines.
Which means the sewer lines need to be replaced.
And they're probably private trees, private property trees.
Probably.
So I think that's getting pretty deep.
I mean,
It's
we
way
do,
underground.
we do say here.
Other codes have it in there. It's gotta, because otherwise we have not, I mean, say somebody 20 years ago planted a silver maple. I can think of a house where they did it. The person has now sold the house, moved on. Silver maple is gonna, what if it busts up the road? And the city all of a sudden has to mill and repair curbs, roads, and sidewalks because of silver maple planted 40 years ago by somebody else. Well meaning, but it just, these things have to be codified for us to be able to enforce those type of things. And you hope it doesn't happen, but
All right, well, you're throwing a monkey wrench at me here.
it's not a monkey wrench. We've been talking about this for 2 years.
Well,
I think in your
So
guys,
where's the language?
I've given you guys language for all of that stuff.
You have?
Oh God, yeah. But this, I think, in the desire to be succinct, a lot of stuff got eliminated that needs to be in here. But
I mean, this is a section, Liz, that I think you're particularly qualified to make some really specific suggestions.
well, and it's more suggestions that we need to determine who's responsible for what. I'm not saying the city should or shouldn't be. I just don't think it was thought out, to be honest with you. I think it was glossed over. City's responsible for whatever's on city property. It's just not that simple, honestly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. We can move, I mean, we don't have to sit here and think about it. I just had to.
No, I know. I mean, I think it would be an oversight if we didn't address it.
Right.
And it's just that, you know, I just don't think we were prepared to
Do that. Yeah.
to do that today, but I think, I don't know how you all feel, but I feel we would be remiss if we didn't.
I'm
Address it.
totally agree. All right, so what I'm gonna do
Okay.
is put a mark around this guy. And I think, you know, we just torpedoed ourselves for trying to get a tree ordinance out today, so I'm ready to accept that. I guess what I would ask is, Liz, if you have specific language that you've given us before, if there's a way you could dig that out and
I'll look for it.
give it to us. But with that, let's move on. I'm gonna keep going here, and we're gonna get this as clean as we can, so that we can, when we get to it, get it done. So Jean, I'm going on to tree protection. And you've added, or excuse me, have eliminated the word required.
It's already there. Required's already there, that's why I eliminated the second use of it.
Oh, I didn't even, oh, I see.
But required is about a tree plan, not the trees. A tree protection
Oh, I
plan
see.
shall be required for any existing trees. If you don't want to repeat the word required, you could say needed to meet the minimum density.
There you go. Okay,
Because they're two different things
yeah.
that are required.
you're right.
Or at least that's the meaning of that sentence.
Okay. All right, so moving right along, 253.8 B2A, English, Spanish.
Why do we need to put something in Spanish?
Because the workers on site may not speak or be able to read English, and that may lead to them violating the protected area around the tree.
But most of them now are Eastern European, not Spanish. So you
Not
put
the-
it in Russian and Slovak and.
Okay, I actually haven't run into any of them. I've run in mostly Hispanic. We actually,
Well,
Susan
I
and
take your point.
took this from
And
another
so
code,
I
but
would-
no, I hear
I'm
what you're
gonna
saying.
join you in your objection, because the minute we start adding languages, you know, we're kind of being subjective here. So I think maybe we just leave that out.
Any thought, Liz?
It's common practice in other municipalities, including Montgomery County, DC, I want to say
To
Arlington
do-
or Alexandria, for it to be in Spanish, because
to
typically
require.
your landscape workers and this is why they have it, landscape workers and tree workers speak Spanish. Now, whether or not that's true here, you know,
It gives you a legal excuse. If it's in English and Spanish, but you happen not to speak either of those, you didn't get the warning.
Right.
Why can't you just have with a sign marking a no entry zone? And just totally eliminate that.
No, excuse me.
In what
Huh?
language?
No, hey, you don't need that, put language in there.
just a circle with a
Oh, you mean a universal,
Yeah.
are you talking about a universal symbol?
No,
No?
I'm talking about the language here, I'm not talking about the actual sign.
and leave it up to whoever's purchasing the sign, installing them, to do whatever language they, because ultimately it's the contractor's responsibility to ensure his crew knows the rules of the city construction rules. Like, for example, working hours.
Right.
It's on the permit in English, but everybody's responsible for knowing it.
Okay.
But it is the best management practice to have it English and Spanish. That's whether or not it needs to
I
be
just
codified.
assume leave it in. I mean, I'm hearing Liz say it's best management practice. I mean, because my experience walking around town and watching people work on properties, all different kinds of crews, is that, you know, the orange, you know, barrier fabrics up, and then whoever comes in just does whatever. I mean, compresses the orange barrier, piles garbage and building materials up against the trunk of the tree. So in my experience.
But that could be in spite of an
They could
English
do it,
language
They
sign.
could do it
or-
in spite of, but my sense is if this is a best practice and it's something we don't do now, why not ask to do it?
All right, so I'm gonna opt to go with you, Sturgis, and leave it as it is, and let the Board of Commissioners decide that. All right, ISA standards. We kind of fiddled with that in terms of definitions too.
I got confused.
Where are we now?
We're
Sorry.
at,
I'm
we're
sorry,
at
we're
the end
still
of
in the
that
same
sentence.
sentence,
Okay.
the next sentence
Oh, I
in the
see it.
same section.
Yeah. One of the things, because in the current code, there is a definition of ANSI standards. In the current code, ISA standards, if they're not in the definitions, I don't believe they're referenced. And when I kind of went online and Googled ISA standards, trying to find a way to define them, the only thing I found was that ISA was a certification program.
Well, they have their own set of standards and BMPs, like booklets for purchase. So for everything you could do to a tree, pruning, cabling,
Okay.
guying, lightning,
And
soil injection.
Are those things that that landscapers reference?
A
ISI,
landscaper?
RS,
Well, no, it'd be
or
a
property owners?
tree company.
So a tree company would reference both ANSI and ISA standards?
Well, ANSI is more about your safety standards.
Okay.
So the ANSI Z133 is basically how to be safe while performing tree care work. So everybody who does tree work is supposed to adhere to both standards.
ISA is more about your
Quality
best
and skill.
practices of,
Yes.
huh,
Yes, here's how
Okay.
you perform a tree injection. Here's how you excavate a root collar. Here's the appropriate place to make a
Okay.
cut. That type of stuff.
okay.
And they
Well,
have some safety. The Z133 is incorporated into ISA standards. ANSI is.
okay.
But you're right in that it is it does provide certification
Okay.
as well, training
Okay.
and certification.
I mean, my feeling is if we list it here, we need to define it. We need to put it in the definitions.
How about if you just change and say may require method of protection in accordance with best practices or something like that?
If you think that's sufficient.
Yeah.
Okay,
Really, the point is to have something that says don't disturb in here, whether it's an orange fence or
uh-huh,
silt fence or something like that.
okay.
I mean, because to me, if we're doing silt fence around the perimeter, which they're required to do now for all the new development,
Right.
it seems pointless to then throw some more orange fence around a lime tree that's already outside the,
The silt barrier.
yeah.
Uh-huh,
So if it was permissible in the code,
uh-huh.
I would permit that to stand as tree protection.
Got it.
All right, so what am I doing?
Liz suggested we change,
Yeah, just
take
if
out,
you-
strike ISA standards and put in best practices.
All right. Jane, you all right with that?
Well, we need to do one or the other. I think I would prefer to define it because that defines it to a standard. Whereas if we just refer to best practices, we're referring to something subjective.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
So what would be a definition for ISA standards?
I
mean,
don't,
that's-
I honestly don't know. You know, we'd have to depend, I think, on Liz to provide
Well,
that because
Well, why not do it the same way we do with the ANSI standards? It's just,
we could just use
You
the
mean
same
the
language.
definition?
We could
Yeah.
we could just use the same language
it basically just takes the ISA and
and do the
defines it.
same thing. That's
what it is.
fine. I don't see any problem with adding one more thing to definitions.
Yeah, it would just say
The
ISA.
standards set by the, whatever
Yeah.
ISA stands for.
Exactly.
Standards set by the, whatever ISA means.
Right.
All right, so in other words, we would leave that alone.
Right, and
Yeah,
just
leave
add,
it in
add the
place.
definition of AS,
Alright.
And then
ISA.
add
No change,
ANSI standards.
no change.
Mm,
Hang on. All right, what is this? Line tree, landscape, high canopy. Okay, it's gonna come in between high canopy. All right, define ISA
each eye.
as done with ANSI. Okay?
Yep.
Mhm.
Very good. All right. Oh, of course, Liz, now we need Liz for this next item. So, I want to hear from Liz about your comment about the building official, not the arborist, up there. So let's come back to that. So now I'm on, whoop,
She's back.
wait a minute, folks.
She's back.
Your timing was excellent. So we're looking at the end of 253-8. It's down under E, first item, letter I, small letter I. And Jean's questioning
Hold on. I had to log
the
back to my
issuance of
computer.
a stop work order.
8. Okay, 8I.
Are you saying that
Okay.
only a
Yeah,
building
the second
inspector
to the
can
last
issue
one.
a stop work order?
I'm saying that a stop work order is a police action and can only be issued by somebody with statutory authority.
So
We're gonna
Dennis,
deputize it.
yeah, he has the constable type. They made it so that he can do it. He's like the constable.
Yeah, the building inspector also gets to have a
Yeah.
badge.
Yeah. So anytime we have something like that,
Huh.
Dennis would right now, as it is, Dennis would go and do it. And in lieu of that, probably Dom, if Dennis was to
Well,
say
so
out.
take a look at that language. I mean, would you be in a position to,
Tell Dennis to do it?
Well, I would talk to Dennis. I mean, theoretically, I could go right to Dennis because we have a good working relationship and say, hey, we need to do stop work for
Right.
blah, blah, blah. In all hierarchy, it would go to Dom, Dennis's supervisor, who would then tell
I mean,
Dennis.
we're not
theoretically.
saying specifically that the city arborist is gonna, you know,
Do-
issue the stop work order.
It could be the referral
Yeah.
by the arborist for civil penalties.
I mean, that's an alternative. We've listed, we've purposefully, based on Liz's request, empowered her to ask for a stop work order.
I understand, but my
And-
question is,
and
do
that's
we need to
how to
codify
phrase
that?
that.
Do we need to codify?
Yeah,
that?
we do, because it's not currently in the code and Liz can't do it. So there are things that occur that she just doesn't have, she's not able to.
But again, the language does not say who is doing
I
it.
know, we could change that.
Why does
We
it? Why
could-
does it need to be?
We could say the request, request for issuance of a stop work order by the arborist of the building official. I mean, if you wanted to be,
I mean, I
That
don't
detailed.
see the point in it unless it's a legal issue,
failure
like
of
where it has
property
to say
owners
who it is.
Yeah,
may
that's
result
my
in the
point.
issuance
I
of-
don't understand. that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's an interesting question, Gene. I mean, this is the tree code, but do we have to, for that reason, specify who actually does it in?
Now, what we can't do,
Enforcement.
We could say the city,
specify what it is. And we can have an official empowered to refer it or ask for it, but we can't have her
so,
issuing.
We haven't said she's gonna do it.
The question is,
Yeah.
does it need to say that, or
yeah,
can we just
so-
leave it as is?
So let me, yeah,
Just
that's,
say it.
that's
So
what
we-
I'm saying,
We
but,
agree that I can't do it.
yeah, but
Personally.
what I would suggest is the issuance of a stop work order by the city for all permitted work.
Or what about may result in the referral or the request for a stop work order?
Okay? Failure of the property owners to comply with requirements may result in the referral. Again, Gene?
The referral to
Issue.
the building official for a stop work order.
Referral to, is that a compliance officer?
Well, it's either, it's Dom or.
Or
the-
building
or the-
official?
Building official.
Yeah.
Building
Referral
official, to the building official.
for The issuance of, I mean, it's clear.
Official,
I don't have a problem with that.
where am I? For the issuance?
Yes.
For the issue, okay,
Mhm.
all right, okay. Boom. All right. Where are we?
Tree plans.
Bottom of appeal.
Appeals. So,
And this is
again, we're going
the
back to
issue
this
again.
question of the variance. I would again suggest the same arguments or dissents or however you want to phrase it, would apply here.
What, where are you?
I'm in appeals, I'm in A.
Why did we
Well, where are we?
Because we're just
Skip
doing
over tree plans?
Gene's notes
Oh,
right
I'm sorry.
now. We're not going through.
Did I miss something? Forgive me. Where do you want to go next?
253-9.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Did we skip something, Gene?
yeah,
I think he's thinking like me, that we're just going through it one by one.
yeah. Is there something in 250? I mean, the next item of business is, from your notes,
From
is
your
on,
notes,
is
we're
on the
following your
appeals.
notes. So we're going to 253-13 appeals
Yeah.
was your next note.
What about all this stuff Goes in 25310.
Well, unless you have an objection to it.
I mean, I have some suggestions.
You're different.
For some,
You're
yeah, I'm different.
You're
I am
next.
different. I'm
You're
next.
Okay, we'll go ahead and do the appeals. Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I wanted to finish yours before
Okay, that's fine.
So the next would be the top of the page, well, my top of the page, whatever, the last sentence in
So,
three, C3.
the answer to your question, Gene, is, unless I'm misunderstanding you, Glenn is the city attorney, is the attorney for the Parks and Shade Tree Commission presently. And do we need to add language to indicate that, or?
Well, the problem is, if there's an appeal from this commission to the Board of Commissioners, he can't be the lawyer for both.
He doesn't represent, he represents the Parks and Shade Tree Commission even at the appeal to the Board of Commissioners, because the city brings in another attorney to sit with the Board of Commissioners.
Right, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Mhm.
We don't say that.
Do we have to, do we need to? I mean, if we need to, that's okay. It sounds like there's already a convention in place.
You have to.
Yeah, there has to.
He cannot sit.
You can't
for
sit
both.
in two places at the same time.
All right, we can leave it the way it is.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
We'll leave it the way it is.
He does the
Okay.
same thing with the planning commission also.
Yeah, that's what I was
Mhm.
envisioning. Okay. So your next item is, well, it's actually, as far as I'm concerned, it's the last item.
Yeah, it is.
The amount seems to be arbitrary, and I guess if I take a moment, maybe I can kill two birds with one stone by explaining how I got to $600 and then $1,200. I base that on the line that's drawn in the dirties at 10 inches, okay? And then you will pay a fee of $20 per DBH inch over 20 inches, okay? Up to $600, which is like 40 inches, if I'm recalling it correctly. And so what I was doing was applying that upper limit to the penalty, but doubling it. I mean, maybe that is arbitrary, but I mean, that's the logic that I was using to arrive at.
That you were just doubling the maximum.
And besides, Liz said that was okay.
Well, I mean, currently, I mean, I guess what I would just sort of say to this is, I think one could claim that our current way of assessing mitigation could be called arbitrary, I guess. I mean, the current
Well,
mitigation is,
This wouldn't be mitigation, this would be the fines and penalties, so it'd be more similar to the 250 to 500 per tree removed without a permit.
mhm.
Yeah, how, are you comfortable with that at this point?
I mean, what amount wouldn't seem arbitrary?
Yeah, that's
Well, I mean,
that's what
not
I'm
so much
saying.
the amount. But
I mean, unless we're gonna have somebody go in and do an actual appraisal for every single tree, I mean, which you could do, but let me tell you, it'd be a lot higher than 1,200.
Mhm.
Any other amount would be arbitrary. I mean, you could pick an amount per DBH inch of tree,
And then it would be really
but
low.
then that number would seem arbitrary as well.
Yeah,
So-
that's what I'm kind of saying. And really compared to our current kind of inch for inch DBH, this is pretty lenient, I think, or has the potential
I'm
to
gonna
be.
say,
well, I mean,
Has the potential
it's
to
all
be.
based around the concept that $600.
per replacement tree.
Yeah. And then the penalty is just doubling that. So.
Mhm. I mean, there's a concept of doubling right now in the code if a tree is destroyed
purposes of
during
penalties?
construction. Yeah, well, it's a sort of a mitigation. It's under the construction
I don't
sort of
use that
thing.
word.
Okay. Prepared to do extent of issues being posed. Gotcha. So, I mean, I'm okay with this.
So let's just, if that's okay, Gene, I'm just gonna leave it.
Yeah, I mean, the alternative is for the penalty to reference something that's a standard outside of this code. Otherwise,
Yeah,
this
no, I
runs
hear
out after a year or two because $1,200 is no longer the same amount of money.
Well, but
That goes to Susan's
That's
argument.
the whole
Yeah,
idea
yeah.
of having fees in a
Which is
separate
in my
place.
little note to the commission.
But I mean, like DC does it per inch, well, per circumference inch.
Mhm.
And they change
Yeah.
it
I mean, that's
every
where this
few
comes from,
every
actually.
few years.
Yeah.
They adjust it. It's 35,
Right.
or at least it used to be $35 per circumference inch,
Mhm.
which is about 900 bucks per
Mhm.
DBH inch
Mhm.
to start, at least.
Mhm.
And they've probably changed that by now, honestly.
Okay, so I'm ready to move on to Sturgis's
Okay.
points.
Okay.
But here's the way I would like to handle it. I have not read, forgive me, I've not read your
Okay.
latest missive
I got it.
on this. And unless you object, hit me with something. What I would like to do is to present to you some of the points that you made in your, whatever, email to me on the 24th, okay? Which hang on, I'm gonna go right through it. Because I felt that you had pretty much bought into all the other changes that we had addressed, other than putting these things into some kind of dissent statement.
Are these, is
tell
what
you.
you're referencing things
tell
that
you.
you decided to put into the code or
No,
other things?
This is directly from you.
Okay, I guess what I'm saying is that I sort of feel like I may have moved on from that.
I understand
So
that.
I don't know.
But I guess my response to that is,
Yeah,
we gotta reach some point where we stop moving on, where we just decide,
Okay.
aside from the fact that we've hit this
Okay.
roadblock with maintenance, to,
okay.
just, it's time to move it over to the Board of Commissioners and let them address it. I mean, to the extent you have issues, it's kind of
Okay.
like what I said to you the other day, I said it earlier this morning,
Right.
is that, I welcome your participation in
Got
the
it.
conversations with these guys, and you can raise those kind of
Okay.
further issues
Okay.
to the extent you want to.
Well, I would prefer not revisiting previous
Yeah.
conversation because some of that may be not something that I'm,
Well, let me just read
okay.
what these things are.
I don't have that in front
Yeah.
of me. I don't even know
Which
what
one
it
are
is.
we looking at?
We don't have
I don't
that.
think there's anything that you have in front of you at the moment, so if you'll bear with, I think if you look at your February 24 email to me, you'll find it.
I don't,
you don't have your-
I don't have any,
Oh,
I don't have any
okay.
of this.
All right, let me just read this and we'll see what happens. I think I have a different recollection of I'm sorry, we're talking about 253.6 minimum density requirements, and specifically C4, so you might want to pull that up. I have a different recollection of the discussion at the meeting regarding this. You presented us with an edited version showing Liz's request that the phrase be shortened to, quote, at least one of the trees satisfying the tree density requirement existing or planted shall be in the front setback, okay? Liz said the additional language before the edit let folks challenge the requirements too easily, and in her opinion, a tree could always be placed somewhere in the front yard.
Well, 4 years, haven't come across one yet where it couldn't be done.
Yeah.
Not to say it couldn't happen, but
Right.
so far.
So, I'm, again,
And in your version, that we're
I'm
looking
open,
at,
I'm
you've-
open to your suggestion, I guess.
I thought you accepted that. I mean,
Okay.
you already accepted
Oh,
that.
okay.
That's why I'm loath
Oh.
to go back there, because I feel like
Okay.
that conversation was
All right.
completed, you and I went through all
Okay.
of that.
All right, let me just read, bear with me, let me read this last thing. Okay, so what are the issues, without getting into the specifics, what are
Okay.
the issues that you've got
Well,
in this paper here?
Okay. Here, these are, some of these issues are ones that I raised with you before. One is that I'm still interested in Liz's opinion about what size of tree we should be
okay.
protecting.
All
So
right.
that's one issue.
All right.
There was a point in our conversation where Liz thought 8 inches was a good.
Yeah, I've kind of been around the 8 to 12 inch range.
Yeah,
See?
you know, we got
That
ourselves.
sounds like 10 to me.
We got ourselves all the way up to 15.
I know.
Without Liz's input, and I am uncomfortable going there without hearing Liz's
All right,
rationale.
So before we get
for-
into depth, give me the other issue or issues that.
Okay. Also with, the first one is protected tree.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like we should strike high canopy tree, because I feel the
Wait a
current
second,
language.
Wait a second.
Current language only protects high canopy, and I believe our intention was to protect all
So
trees
we're in
above a
protected
certain
tree.
size.
And you have to think the smaller understory trees won't really be getting that large.
Are you in the definition
Theoretically.
for protected
I'm in
tree?
definition for
Oh, okay.
protected tree, that's
All
where
right.
I started.
So like it's incredibly rare to have a 15-inch dogwood or redbud. That's just
Yeah.
not common. So
All
whether
right.
or not it says high canopy
Yeah.
they get a
and
little
I just-
excluded.
Yeah, and
All
we've
right,
got
so
a
we're-
definition
give me
of high
specific
canopy.
a specific site here. Are you in any
I-
existing high canopy tree?
I am in 2.
So you would eliminate
I would take out high
Any
canopy
existing
tree.
tree
Any existing tree,
of
and
X
I would,
inches.
of X inches
All
or
right,
more.
we'll get back to the X in a minute.
That's what I
Are
would
you okay with
suggest.
eliminating high canopy?
Yes.
He is. It just went out. Sorry, Susan. Okay.
No, that's not it to
That's what you
Susan.
get
I
for
mean,
not coming to
I
the
mean,
meeting.
but again,
Okay,
I
we're
really
good.
want us to revisit the 15 inches.
we will,
because
we
I
will.
think
What's the
that
next issue?
is too
What's the next issue?
big. Okay. So we've already taken care of the other issue I had under that definition, which was to strike 4.
I'm sorry.
I wanted to get rid of
3 and 4?
No, well, we've already struck 3
Wait a second.
per our
Yeah,
conversation.
I got to go back to.
Okay.
I got to go back to Jean's paper. All right. So
So
where are you now?
we're down at protected tree 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And we, per Jean's recommendation and our agreement, we struck both 3 and 4.
Right.
So I also agreed we should strike 4. So anyway, so that's neither here nor there, so we don't have to go
Okay.
there.
Okay.
Okay. The next one that I'm looking at is the city arborist section. And one thing I'm suggesting we add a D to city arborist, because we really haven't we're describing what she does. This is kind of her job description. And one thing we have not listed anywhere in here is that she is responsible for planting and removing trees. And so what I suggested, we've talked about her role in maintenance, but we haven't referenced planting and removal.
Why do
So,
we have to codify that?
because we've essentially said what it is that she does, and if I,
Excuse me.
yeah.
We've said what she does for the protection of trees and for the, doing the canopy and all that kind of stuff. But if her job description includes going out and planting trees or whatever else you got in there, I don't see why that needs to be in the
It
code.
shouldn't be in there. It should be under tree maintenance.
Oh.
It should,
Okay, let me just tell you, but let me just tell you, let me just,
Okay,
one of
go,
the,
go,
okay,
go.
one of the issues we have not addressed in here anywhere is that street trees are not supposed to be planted or removed without Liz saying that they can do it. And we haven't said that in here. I mean, to me, maintenance is not the same as planting and removing. It's pruning, it's.
no, maintenance.
Maintenance includes planting and removing? But would a normal citizen reading maintenance?
Yeah, I would say it does, yeah.
Would a citizen, okay, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If you want to plant a street tree in front of your house and you looked at the code and nowhere on there did it tell you, did it mention planting, would you think that maintenance covered
So,
planting?
Well, I wouldn't assume one way or the other. I'd
So-
find out.
so Sturgis,
But do people do
Sturgis,
that?
it's funny you're bringing this up because you're the guys that argued to eliminate public tree, street tree, and all that stuff.
And
I mean,
that's what
I'm the guy that was probably influenced by this lady over here to put that kind of stuff in there, but you nuked it.
I had.
You got, and I'm saying
It's
you
back in
is
there.
the you and Susan nuked.
Do you want me to tell you? I had public space tree permits: planting, pruning, removing, relocating, treating, spraying, root pruning.
Yeah, so I mean, I gave all that up. I gave it up.
And that's why I'm just saying.
We're going around in circles
we
here. I
put
don't
the-
want to do
we
that
put the-
anymore.
We put the baby back in. I mean, the thing
Yeah.
is, Jean, Jean has made comments. You have made changes. I'm suggesting, and I just hate to leave something out. Here's what I suggested. The city arborist shall be responsible for planting, maintenance, and removal of trees and landscaping on public property and as needed, authorizing others to perform these activities.
What do you think, Liz?
She's responsible for authorizing people to do that. There's a lot in our original code that talks about when and how and with what authority a person can plant or remove or do things to
Right
street
now, they have
trees.
to go to Park and Shade. The power is given to the Park and Shade
Right,
tree
and
to
we've-
prune, plant, remove, relocate,
Right,
blah, blah, blah.
and we're saying, no, they don't need to do that, they can ask you. You have the authority to say. And we don't have anywhere in here, to me, that says in plain language that somebody has to have Liz's authority to plant or remove a street tree.
So, Liz, I'm, again, going along to get along, I'm willing to stick that in there.
I don't think the addition hurts anything. And I mean, I feel like one of our goals is to make this accessible to the general public, and understandable, and I don't know. I'm not gonna die on this hill, but I just had to
Okay.
make a case for it.
How do you feel, Gene?
Unfortunately, the way I feel is that we've spent
Yeah.
more time on this than the commission
Ditto.
can spend on it, and they're not gonna pay any attention to what we're saying anyway.
Well, then let's just go home.
Yeah, no.
So for your consideration,
Yes,
there it is.
I'm willing to put it in. I'm willing to put it in. So I gotta go to this thing. Is you got specific language in here?
I do.
Put a red line around it. Or
Okay.
show me.
Okay,
All
right here,
D?
D.
All right.
Here's the
As is.
section.
All right.
Right here.
New D.
New D.
All right.
Okay. If we then go
So,
to,
D.
Yeah.
C. I call you SD,
You may.
31 notes. Okay. All right.
All right, if
Are we ready to go to 15 to 10 or
if
12
go to-
or
go to-
17? Or
If
what?
you would go to
She's
10,
got another
tree
one.
removal permits. I got down to here.
Okay.
Look how big the print is. It's almost,
Okay.
it's almost nothing. It's almost nothing.
All right.
Okay, if you go to C4, under 10.
All right. I'm going to my posted version of this thing.
C4, one of the things that Liz mentioned and suggested, and I like,
Wait a minute now. The
Yes.
current language as proposed
okay,
in the latest draft
right,
is C4. A tree is determined to be of an invasive species or,
correct.
okay.
One of the things Liz mentioned, and I liked her idea, and I don't know any reason why we couldn't put it in here, that, let me see. I suggested a change of this language, or it could be divided into 2 items. A tree is determined to be of an invasive species, or one of these species. Bradford pear, comma, there were trees that Liz.
That was in your
I
original.
think it's better if you list the species.
Yes,
You
no,
think it is
no,
better?
I wanted you to.
Yes,
Did-
because you can, I mean, like a mimosa, for example, you can make, that is technically classified as an invasive. It's not really invasive here, though. Same as, we have a tree in one of the parks that's, I didn't know what it was when I started here. I had to look it up. I've never seen one before. It's classified as invasive. It's 15 inches and does not have a single sapling, seedling, or anything coming off of it. So it may be invasive, but it's not
It's
here.
not creating a problem.
No.
Invasive actually means that it spreads
just-
and
yeah.
pushes out native stuff.
So
Well, it's
I
all-
thought we had discussed, and frankly, and again, going along to get along, I'm open to this, but didn't we, and I seem to remember Pete was the guy that came up with this concept, was to have another list or a sub-list or a different category of the list of trees that are in the internet or whatever, or available in the office or whatever,
We could
that
reference.
identified those.
Wouldn't
Well-
it be a lot easier if it was just right here for somebody to read?
If it's
But that
short-
leaves, then it's codified and you're stuck with those 4 or 5 trees.
So, I mean, it's not changing. Pears 20
No,
years from now
I
are still going to be
understand, but
invasive
there might-
pears.
But there might be other trees that come along or exist that we're not familiar with that might
I mean, it
apply.
does happen.
And then all you have to do is add it to your list.
Yeah, but for them to become a widespread problem, it's not something that's going to happen overnight.
All
They're
right.
not just going to pop out of nowhere.
If you were going to
Okay.
give us a list, what would it be?
Of trees that should be
Of
exempted.
trees that should be, yes.
Pear, Norway maple, ailanthus. Well, we should make it Bradford pear specifically.
Right.
Because some of the newer pears are actually okay.
What is that one with the funny name? Norway maple, what is the
Ailanthus,
ailanthus?
Japanese black pine. I'd probably put Leland cypress in there too. They're not invasive, but they're certainly a nuisance tree.
That's the reason for putting it in a separate list that she keeps, is because it can change.
Yeah, that's my
How-
point.
how do you-
Well, put
That's
it
my
this
point.
way, in the last 20 years, if you asked somebody 20 years ago, those probably, well, let's say 10, more realistic, those probably would all be on there.
Are there no hybrids these days that may become that way?
Who can predict the future?
Exactly
But
the
like
point.
for something to become a widespread problem established on landscapes, that takes years.
Uh-huh.
Like the Bradford pears were planted widely by the state in like the 80s. And
Okay.
in the last 5 to 10 years, we realized what a problem they were. So I don't think it's imperative that that list be flexible, but
Here's the reason that I'd like it in there. It doesn't take up a lot of room. And Liz doesn't seem to have a problem with something having
What's
to
that?
be
That's an 80-foot tall,
changed.
200-foot wide mimosa.
see? That's why I love mimosas, but they are technically invasive.
But, you know, Yeah, I know, I love it. Liz really wanted us to allow property owners to re-landscape by removing species of any size that and that even could be healthy, that are no longer recommended, and be able to replace them with more beneficial natives. And I don't know, I just would like to honor her request to do that.
So where are you, Gene? Can you go along to get along? We'll put those in there.
Well, I will. I think it's not a bad, not a good
Okay,
idea.
but I mean, we can make a statement. I would intend to make a statement, which is, that this should be in a list of trees. It's not in the code.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right, so where are they?
I got two.
Where are they? Yeah, hang on.
Okay.
Where are they? I need,
Okay.
oh, here it is, right here.
10.
So,
Yeah.
C4, trees
C4.
that, or, a trees determined, oh, I see, okay, substitute. All right, I'm gonna scratch that. Substitute,
Do you want to strike invasive species and just put those, Liz? Would
Yeah.
that be? Okay, a tree is one of these species.
wait, substitute, SD, language.
Yeah, so what she wants to
Three,
do.
okay, hang on, I'm
Yeah.
one paper at a time. All right, so,
You want
a
determined to
tree is
be
determined to be,
one of these species.
one of these species. Bradford pear,
And here are the others if you want to write them.
where are they? Bradford pear, comma,
Comma, Norway maple.
yep.
How do you spell alanthus? Alanthus?
Look up.
It's all right, don't worry about it, give me your best shot. Atlanthus, Alanthus,
Yeah, we'll try it.
yeah,
I
comma,
was think about adding the white mulberry.
Japanese
Black pine.
Japanese black pine. You getting all this, Gene? Japanese
You want me to tell you how to spell Atlantis now?
black pine, Pine, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And Leland cypress.
Yeah, I got 4 of them in my backyard.
Okay.
And, is it and Leland cypress?
Are we done, or you want one more?
I'm not sure about the mulberry. I'm up in the air.
Kind of like mulberries.
Leland
Aren't they
cypress.
native?
The red.
The red is, but not the white.
Okay.
Alanth. Do you want me to spell Atlantis
Yes,
for you?
yeah.
AIL
AIL.
Okay.
ANTHUS.
Thank you. It was close.
Put a I.
Had most of it. All right.
Okay, I got just 2 more things. 253-12, replacement of protected trees. Off-site alternatives. So it's B, off-site alternatives. And I would prefer that,
B1, where are you?
okay, I'm down at B1B.
Yeah, I was afraid of
B1B.
that.
I would prefer that you pay a supplemental fee or mitigation fee or whatever you want to call it in the
Okay.
amount of $600 for each tree not replaced. I just feel like if we're asking people to plant a tree.
So
for
if they got a 4-inch tree, they gotta pay $600?
Well,
Excuse me.
we're not
Excuse
protecting.
me, a 14-inch tree. 14-inch tree.
How much would they pay for a newly planted tree of 2 inches? Liz?
I'm sorry, what?
How much, if you went and bought a tree
If I hired a landscaper
If you
to
hired a
plant a
landscaper
tree,
to plant a tree of 2 inches caliper, how much would it cost?
it depends on the species. Anywhere from 400 to, I mean, if you're talking like hard to get species, 7, maybe 8, possibly.
So I think 600 is not a lot of money. I don't,
How are we determining what? Is it just a 1-for-1 replacement?
we're doing all 1 for 1.
Yeah, so in that case, it doesn't really make sense to do it by DBH.
Mm-mm.
Now, if it was,
I'm
if
sorry?
it,
It would make more sense.
it doesn't make, if we're doing, remember when we originally had the scale, like for trees of a certain size, it's 1 replacement, for gigantic trees, it's 3. That makes sense in this, but I'm kind of a sturgis on this, it's just,
If we're doing 1 for 1, $600 is nothing. I don't know why.
For a $2 million property, I agree.
Yeah.
What do you say,
Okay with
Liz?
that? Liz says she agrees with
what are
me.
you at?
Huh? You do
600
600?
bucks.
All
Yeah,
right.
I think that's-
Where are we?
So that would be
Help me.
253-12, B,
So we're gonna forget the inches.
B,
Pay a
1B.
supplemental fee
Pay of
in the amount of $600.
for
right?
each, yes,
$600
for each tree not replaced.
for each tree not replaced.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Last one, violations.
Okay.
You gonna pound that again?
Just
I
got,
changed it entirely
got-
to what you.
I got just the one thing. The one thing we haven't said is where the $1,200 is gonna go. And so I'm just suggesting we put,
Going into the party fund.
yes, the party fund. So we need to say D, I suggested E, fees referenced in D above will be placed in the city's tree preservation account.
Didn't we,
We have that reference.
wasn't there language like that's?
Yeah, but it's in reference to.
Somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
Where was
But
that?
not specific to this.
Yeah, where was that? I'm looking for consistency.
Well, I tried to look at it, but I couldn't think of a way to word it.
No.
Yeah, no, I know.
I'm accepting your language.
got it, I got
just
it.
want to make sure, excuse me, it's consistent with what we've got wherever else we have it.
I know. I agree. It's under 253-12,
Mhm. Yes.
C.
C,
Yep,
fees paid for replacement trees will be placed in the city's tree, okay. All right, so, where am I? I lost my,
so then if you go to
all right. So now I'm
the
down
last
to
one, and just because.
D, am I in D?
Yeah, you're looking at D, but I'm suggesting
Alright.
adding an E.
Add an E,
Add an
okay.
E,
Okay,
and I just thought the easiest way to say it is fees referenced in D above will be placed in the city's tree
Alright, hang
preservation
on.
account.
all right. Fees, again,
Referenced in D above,
well, REF, it's in section 253,
correct.
15D, yes,
Will be placed in the city's tree preservation account.
How does it ever get out of the account?
What?
How does it ever get out of the account?
How does it get out?
Yeah.
We
Maybe they
had
have a party.
We had a conversation about that, and there was some.
I'm changing will to shall.
We
Okay.
encumber it in the budget. We budget it like a line item, encumber it for it to be spent.
Is it required to be spent?
Required? I don't,
You're gonna sit there in the account for the next 40 years.
I mean, yeah, I guess it's not
So
required
what would you
to be
suggest,
spent.
Yeah, it's never been required to be spent. What do you think about that?
I think that's a mistake.
Got
You
it.
think it's
I
what?
hear you.
Mistake.
You think it's a
Yeah.
mistake? Well, I think it's a shame to collect money and not do something.
Especially
constructive.
when its purpose is collected to replace something that isn't replaced.
Correct. What it says in the current code is that it will be, to be used to, I don't know, plant and maintain trees on
City
on
property.
city property or other use as the city deems appropriate, or something to that effect. One of the things that folks would like to see that money, some people would like to see that money be able to be paid for, is incentive programs for people to plant trees on private property or maintain them better on private property. I believe we asked Glenn if that would be permissible, given the current language, and it was his opinion that it was not. I suggested language that
I understand.
expressly said that it could be used for that.
You good with that, though, right?
And I was shot down by folks in presence at our last meeting, which is why it now doesn't say anything.
Yeah, I think it probably would be best done by the mayor appointing a committee of maybe 3 to 5 people who direct how it's spent.
I agree. I see this as a budget issue.
Well,
Huh?
But except that it would be mandated to be spent.
No. Yeah,
That's good.
but how does that fit into what we're doing?
I'll find a place where it is in another, somebody else's, something of the city's code, and give it to you.
Okay.
Well, that would not be common with in other cities, when there are penalties and fines, it goes back into like their operating budget, which is kind of how we operate.
Yeah.
That would be common. All I can say is before I was started, nobody ever spent any money. Since I started, I was able to get it put in the budget and encumbered and to be spent planting trees. That being said, it should be self-sustaining. So based on the records, we've been pulling in, say 7,000 a year, which I think it's more than that. Well, we've kept the spending at that, so it is self-sustaining. So if we have a large project that needs to be done, say planting a bunch of trees on Rehoboth Avenue, we are able to pull money from that and use it to fund that.
And the current language is monies received from the property owner in lieu of mitigation will be placed in the city's tree preservation account for planting trees on public property, or as the city declares appropriate, to preserve and manage trees for the purpose of protecting the health, safety, and welfare of citizens of Rehoboth Beach.
I've been a proponent, is that I think it should be used to establish a grant for planting and maintenance of private property trees. I've said that for at least 2 years now.
Yeah.
We don't need like a bunch of different committees to do that. Like we have tree committees, we have commissioners, we have a city manager. If they all agree that that's what it should be used for, including the city solicitor.
I mean, the current language kind of is how can I say?
Leaves
I mean,
it open.
it sort of speaks to using that money for any effort that would satisfy the intent of the code in total, including private trees, but it doesn't specifically say that. I'm hearing you, Liz, say you would like it to specifically permit that.
I think I think the code could say that add those in there. But I don't know if it's really a code's job to like put incentives in place. I think the way the language is appropriate for, say, the mayor and commissioners or city manager or whoever to declare that we are going to establish an incentive program. I don't, as long as the city solicitor saw no problem in it. And the use of the funds, I mean.
But I'm also with you, Jean, that if we collect it, it should be spent. And it's just determining how it should be spent.
Anything else?
Not now. I mean, no, I mean, I'm through with my little list. I would, I mean.
The
we've-
door is always open.
We have asked Liz, I mean, this is just an idea, an idea.
Okay.
We've asked Liz to revisit the maintenance section.
He
And make
found
some
what I have.
specific-
I'm about to discuss that,
Okay.
And I don't even know if we ever 100% flushed that out.
and I agree.
I think that was just my initial
I agree.
stab.
I agree.
And my thought is we could, if we're going to ask her to do that, either right here now in real time or between now and whatever we do next today, she might also take a stab at drafting some language for the tree preservation account.
I think it's fine as it is in the existing code.
In the
What is-
existing code. Are you
Excuse me?
aware, she likes the way the language
I don't
is in
see-
the existing, the current code that we're using. She
I mean, you
wouldn't change
could
that.
add in maybe one line onto that, including the establishment of incentive programs on private property.
But wait a
I
second
mean,
here now.
Were you
When
aware?
excuse
I'm
me,
sorry.
excuse me.
No, go right ahead.
When you say that, are you talking about, there, 253, this is the current code, 253:27, maintenance of trees. Property owners shall maintain all trees on their lots so that they are healthy and present a neat and orderly appearance, free of refuse and debris, period. Is that what you're talking about?
No, we're talking about the tree preservation account.
Oh.
We're on the tree
Oh.
preservation account. That's what I
Okay.
was saying
I-
is, and what Liz is saying is she likes the current language exactly as it's written.
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem if you want to add on this something about incentives.
Are you aware, Liz, and I don't know that I'm getting this wrong, that Glenn said, given the current language, he didn't think the city could use the money for trees, for any trees on private property?
No, if he said that to me, I don't remember it. But
Okay. and-
then I would just add that line on to
Okay.
include, because the way I read that, where'd it go again? I can't.
It is
Okay.
253-36.
Okay.
36,
So let me do that.
C2.
So if I may interrupt you, here's what I am proposing to do.
Okay.
I have found language that Liz had proposed earlier, and again, it may need further work, but what I'm going to suggest is I'm going to ask Ann I'm going to send the language to Ann and have her print out 3 or 4 copies for us, and then we can discuss it a little bit further. We may not get it done today, so, okay.
Okay, great. I'm going to take a quick break.
Well, hold on, because if he leaves and you leave, then you don't have. We
But
have to.
I think everything's sort of on hold right now, is it not?
You're
Hi,
recording.
Les.
Okay.
Hi, Les. Thank you.
Yeah, and then you can get it printed.
Chair, may I take a break while you're doing that?
She just
suggested-
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we're going to take maybe a 10-minute recess or 15-minute recess, because I need a break too. commence the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. 11:13. So what I've got here, for the record, is a document of which the first page only would be, I think, appropriate for our discussion.
That's all I printed was the first page, I think.
And so,
Maybe I didn't. Yeah, the other one was just copied and pasted, so we can
Yeah.
trash that on us. We'll recycle it. So to
so
speak.
this is a document to the best of my recollection. Let's see if I can. Yeah, it was back in July. I think you provided this to me back in July of 2019. I have no idea when you actually created it, but nevertheless. So just to give it a point of reference in terms of where we were at that point.
It says I created it in March. So about a year ago.
So some of this language, excuse me, I'm looking down at 253.12 on this document, maintenance of private trees. And it identifies a number of issues that I think we've already addressed, pruning of overhanging trees.
Is that in?
So, I mean, conceptually, Liz, what is it that you feel would be appropriate for us to modify the language in the posted?
The big difference in this is I made a distinction between, and the best I came up with, city tree versus private tree. And a city tree was any tree planted by the city or naturally grown. And a private tree was something that they either planted on private property or was planted on city property by a private property owner. So I made a distinction between those two.
So, if I may, I'll go back to.
Well, and then created the permit to go along with work on them and who's responsible for maintenance of what.
That's really the key to this, but to go to the points that you were making before, let's see if I can find it here. I had, actually, I believe I had 3 definitions, bear with me. Yeah, so I had 3 definitions of trees. The first was public tree, a tree on public land in all areas owned by the city. And then I had a street tree, a public tree on land lying between the property lines of either side of all streets, avenues, or ways within the city. That kind of, I may have altered the existing language a little bit, but that's kind of where that was from. And then finally, a definition for the term tree, a living woody plant having a well-defined stem and a more or less well-defined crown. Now, you had added language, Liz, excuse me, you had added language that further defined it, and it read, and which is capable of attaining a height of at least 15 feet, which again, I believe was in the, or is in the current code,
The code we have.
not necessarily as a tree definition, but.
No, it is.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, okay,
otherwise you could end up
okay,
with
okay,
a hydrangea tree counting as a tree.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
because it has a stem and it has a
Right.
canopy. But I think the big issue is we have to, decide what kind of maintenance, who's responsible for what, if we're gonna put it in the code, and then if we're making any difference between trees planted by somebody else on city property without permission or not.
Well, actually.
For example, if somebody planted a hedge.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about, but
It's
what I
all
was
over.
gonna say is, I think we need to separate it to, say, trees planted on public property with or without, permission of the city, or however we characterize it. because there are circumstances where it would be reasonable for somebody to say, I want to put a street tree in, as I've just
Yeah.
defined it. And they come to the city and they get authority to do that, permission to do that.
That does happen.
So, any reaction from what you're reading over there, Gene or Sturgis, about some of this stuff?
Jean, you wanna weigh in?
Yeah, I'm talking about this, yeah. The language that Liz had created.
Is this supposed to supplant what's on there?
Well, I would say no, based on just a quick look at it, but again, I think we've already dealt with some of these issues. We're not gonna get this done today, so
No.
I mean, just understand that.
Right.
But I guess my point is, are there issues or portions of this thing that look like they're usable or not usable, and what's your feelings about it? That's kind of where I'm coming from.
Well, unfortunately, my feelings have nothing to do with this. It has to do with the timing and the fact that if we don't do it today, it means we're gonna go into May and maybe June. And I think it's too much time for too much
Okay.
effort.
All right, well, okay, I'm willing to explore that concept, because I'm kind of the same mind, Gene. I mean, what would you propose? So the city arborist has, I use the term monkey wrench, that's not very nice, but.
Well, I gave it to you over a year ago, so I don't know if that's a monkey wrench.
Yeah, no, but I mean, the point is, we've crafted language which the city arborist does not believe is appropriate, and I think that's reasonable, but, you know, if we want to march forward, how do we do that, recognizing she's given us significant concerns about this?
I personally, I don't think it would be unreasonable to try to insert in this maintenance section something about referring to the responsibility for repair or removal and the cost of trees on private property damaging city, or storm damage, or just something. I think without rewriting this those are the two things that jump out at me.
Again, the
The two things that jump out at me that are missing here completely are the things about who's responsible for private trees damaging city infrastructure, and who's responsible for damage caused by a storm to a tree. The one thing that's interesting is here that you mentioned, but you don't have anything in here. What if a tree on city property, or a city tree, is damaged in a storm and falls on and harms private property?
Regular legal precedent would take its due course, which is
Okay.
Wherever the tree falls, you are responsible.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the same thing as the garbage truck runs up over my lawn, you know.
But you've suggested here that if there's damage of a private tree on a city property, that the homeowner should be responsible. And to
Yeah,
me,
which is pretty common in municipalities, yes.
so a city tree can harm a private property, but the private property owner's responsible. But if his
Legally, they have to be, yes. We cannot go onto private property and do tree work.
Okay.
Can't do it. It's just the bottom line with that.
But would the private property owner have to pay the cost of the tree work if the
What
city
tree work?
a city tree, there's a
Your
street tree.
insurance would cover it.
The insurance would cover it.
Most insurances, yes.
Okay.
So generally, say you have a storm,
Okay.
because I've dealt with a lot of storms in my previous job, tornadoes, superstorms. If a tree falls and it falls, boom, 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 say trees fall and one tree lands on 3 different properties, property line to property line. And your insurance will cover a certain portion.
However, the city is not insured in the same way. So if a private property owner's tree falls on city property and damages it, the city's not insured in the same
I
way.
don't know about the city
I mean,
insurance.
I
I
don't-
just
I mean, I
know
don't know.
this is in my research with
Yeah.
municipal tree codes, this was
Right.
the most common.
Oh, this is language you have taken.
Oh, yeah, I didn't make this up.
No, no.
No, it came primarily, I looked at, if I recall correctly, the main 2 that I used were Atlanta and DC. Now there are also others that are good examples, but those 2 are touted as being 2 of the best tree ordinances in the country. And then I think
Okay.
like Portland and a couple other Western ones, but they're a little more out there.
Gotcha.
Okay, so your points are well taken. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, I do think, I mean, this is something Liz has been lobbying for since we've been in this process, and I just feel, at a minimum, those 2 things
Okay.
should be in there, and wouldn't,
Well, we also don't have anything like where I have on here, the maintenance of city trees, 25310, the city shall have the right. We don't really have that said on here anywhere.
the right to do
The right
What?
to do
Where are
tree
you?
work.
on
Give me a number.
public property or
25310.
private property?
10?
Okay,
Okay.
your 253.
Mine, 25310, maintenance of city trees.
Right to perform
10A.
on all streets, alleys.
10A?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
I think we need some, I mean, it doesn't have to be that language, but we need to have something, so if somebody comes out screaming and yelling about us pruning their tree that's planted on city property, bam,
Okay.
right here.
well, what we have here is that trees and landscapes on public property shall be maintained by the city, unless maintenance by another party is authorized in writing by the city arborist. I mean, to me, that's, to me, includes having the right to.
Yeah, and I disagree with that statement on there,
Okay,
on the draft.
I got it.
Because it explicitly says, in your language, it explicitly said, the city shall have the right.
We have the right, not the responsibility, to take care of everybody's junk that they planted on city property.
Where am I? Where am I?
I think we were hoping to cover that by saying that unless maintenance by another party is authorized in writing, and,
Yeah, I don't think she's so concerned about the third party. I think she's concerned about,
well, the other party could be the person that planted the tree on public property.
So say somebody plants a hedge of Leland cypress to block their house along Columbia, Henlope, and Sussex Kent. And in a storm, let's just say in normal weather, what we would consider normal weather, which can include normal storm conditions here, so nor'easter type condition. They fall onto vehicles, onto people, onto pets, onto landscaping. Who should be responsible for that? The city didn't plant the Leland cypresses.
On private property.
No, they
On
say
public.
they were planted on
Street
public.
trees.
Yeah, so we didn't plant a hedge of Leland cypress to block the view of this house. So now what? The taxpayers are supposed to pony up $2,000 to go out and do tree work? That's what this comes down to. We're taking on a lot of liability. A lot of liability when we say we have everything on the right of way.
all right, I'm going to suspend this discussion. I mean, I think we've put some interesting issues on the table. And I'm going to turn to Jean again to more of an administrative issue.
Well, Do we want to try and do the 15-inch thing? I think
I-
you can
I
resolve
would-
that
at a
today.
minimum-
Oh,
at a
that's
minimum,
right, that's
I
right.
wanna-
Well, let
I
me
would like
let
to
me
do
finish
Do
this
yours?
little
Okay.
business up. And we've actually got another issue with regard to appeals too that we need to take up. But as an administrative matter, in your interest and mine, in moving this over to the Board of Commissioners, do you see a way of doing it short of, you know, delaying this for another meeting to rework this particular section of
We
the,
send it over like it is with notes.
with notes?
Yeah. There's nothing.
Well, we're
that
gonna
says
have
we
notes
there's nothing that says
anyway.
we have to finish every
Okay,
comma and
okay.
period and
All
quotation mark or whatever.
right.
And when
How do you
say-
feel
when-
about that?
Well, as is, I would like it to incorporate the things we agreed upon today.
Oh, it will? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm
Got it.
definitely gonna do that.
But if there are a few.
If we do a motion,
if
it
there are a
has to be
few
with the changes that we've,
that we
that we've
agreed to
decided.
today.
yeah, that's gotta be in the motion.
Got it.
Cause
Got it.
what we've posted is not,
Okay.
I think you guys should still vote today.
We could
Okay,
do
okay,
that, but
okay.
I guess
Uh-uh.
a note might say, we're not completely, complete, or
Well,
this section or
yeah.
this.
Not
Here's-
100%
here's
Two
what I would
items,
propose.
100%.
Here's what I would propose. I would propose to, and I mean, one of you guys are gonna do the motion, but I would propose to have a referral that includes minutes and a separate set of notes, if you will, Gene, that identifies, and we're gonna have to put this document into the record as well, at least the first page of it, as an item, okay? And what I'm gonna suggest is that maybe you and I, and if we can get Liz to give us another hour or so at a separate meeting, if that's okay with you, Gene, to come up with more specific language for a note?
Good.
Or we could send over the
Yeah.
modified copy of
Right.
this as we've got it
Right.
with a dissenting memo from each member of the board.
Yes, oh, okay. I
Saying-
was gonna incorporate that in the minutes. I was gonna have everybody state their dissents or issues.
It may not be that easy to do, but we could certainly do that, but the point is to get it out of here.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I'm afraid from the commission's perspective, we won't get another chance to do any more of this or anything else if we take much longer.
Right.
Because they're gonna take our 18 months worth of work and they're gonna spend 18 months on it. And
Okay, well, if
No problem.
everybody's in agreement with that, then, let's finish up these other items, and then I'm gonna call for a motion. So, 15 inches, is that what we're talking about?
And I would prefer somewhere between 8 and 12 based on Liz's wisdom.
So
I'm still with 10.
would it help? I have a, which I've used occasionally, tree diameter in inches based on the estimated age, and it's based off of like a half a dozen studies throughout Central Park and Chicago and other Midwestern areas. So it can take it with a grain of salt, but let's pick a couple of trees that we might have here. So a silver maple, which is a fast grower. At 10 inches, it's estimated to be about 9 years old. At 15, it's estimated to be 18. Let's take a London plane, which is also a pretty fast grower, I think. 10 inches is estimated to be 16 years old, 15, 25. All right, white oak at 10 inches is 24 years old. At 15 is 36. Pin oak at 10 is 28. At 15 is 38.
And that's a high canopy.
Yeah, these are all high canopy.
Oh, they're all, okay.
Yeah, they all are
Forgive me.
canopy trees. But just to give perspective on how long it takes to reach certain sizes.
because that's, I mean,
So give us your best argument about why you want the number you want.
I'm gonna try, and I'm just, this is just sort of my gut feeling. You know, one of the things Liz said, I remember when she referenced 8 inches, where she, you know, let me see if I can wrap my head around this. It essentially, you know,
You wrap your arms around the trunk.
wrap your arms, right. Essentially, when we're saying you can take a tree down, what we're saying is it's going to be replaced by, what am I trying to say? I'm struggling with this. I mean, I guess the smaller we have diameter, the more trees we protect. So I guess on one level, that's my bias, because I'd rather preserve more trees.
You're going smaller.
Yeah, I want
Bottom
to
line.
go smaller
Right.
than 15.
Right.
So, what would your rationale, Liz, be for choosing? I mean, how would you explain? I mean, you kind of said something like it would take how many years to have that regenerate? Or if you took out an 8-inch tree, you're looking at a tree that's.
Well, I think what we wanted to do is provide some flexibility for people that
Right.
things start to grow and they don't realize it, or
Right.
they pick out the wrong thing,
Right.
plant the wrong thing.
Right.
And I think 5-10 years is plenty of time to
To
figure
have-
out
to
you made the
figure
wrong
out you made-
decision. Do we have to wait until a tree is 30 years old and be like, oh, I don't like it anymore?
Got it.
That's not a
Okay,
whim,
okay.
you know, an arbitrary thing.
So, you know, if a tree were, just say we say 8 inches, DBH. So what are we looking at? Something about yay big?
No,
Well, I mean, she gave us
8
the points
inches,
of
8
reference.
inches.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at a tree this big.
But remember, we're also measuring it up at DBH now
4.5
versus down at
feet.
down at the ground.
4.5 feet.
Right, up, which means that it's wider at the trunk, obviously, than it is
At
up
the base,
here,
yeah.
At the base.
With young
But-
trees, it's closer. With the
Right.
mature ones,
But still, I mean, my guess is somebody should have figured out before a tree got to 8 inches that they don't like it. That's still a pretty darn big tree.
that's kind of my point. Is like
know?
right now, it's 4 inches if it's one of the small species protected,
Right.
or 4 inches if it's in your front yard, and 6 inches if it's not.
Right.
And that's like barely bigger around than a can of soda. I mean,
Right.
you'd have trouble looking at that and saying, well, is it a shrub? Is it a tree?
8 inches. I mean, we've got volunteer, like, kind of weird things growing around ours, and they're this big, and they're already.
You
You
could
know,
have a sassafras
they're-
pop up in the corner of your yard and you don't notice, and all of a sudden you look and it's 3 inches and it's only been a few years. And you're like,
Yeah,
oh, shoot,
I mean,
it's
we've
protected
got 'em-
now.
We've got them like about yay big, and they're like 10 feet tall. I mean, there's no way I could not know that I've got a junk tree on
So-
there and I need to get it out. So I
Saying it a
think,
different way, Sturgis,
yeah,
8 inches,
I think 8 inches.
At what
is
size does a
big
tree become a real tree?
I think a
That's
real
what it
tree. I
is.
think
8 inches?
is a substantial tree.
So-
Like I said,
there.
8 to 12 is, I think,
So-
probably an appropriate step up from where we are now, which is
So-
4.
12, 8, let's go
So-
8.
I'm fine anywhere.
I'm ready
in
to
that
go
range.
8.
Yay, yay 8.
I'm ready to go 8. Where am I gonna put the 8?
You're gonna put it under protected tree.
Wherever it says 15.
And wherever, yeah, anywhere.
Hang on.
15
We've
DBH.
only got it one
hang
place.
on. All right, hang on. Protected tree.
Yep,
Protected tree, blah, blah, blah. Oh, wait a second, I gotta go to Gene's. Gene's copy. Where's Gene's copy? All right. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Protected tree,
number 2,
2, any existing
tree.
tree of 8 inches, I'm going to spell out the word 8, E-I-G-H-T, okay, or more DBH, in a setback not otherwise approved for accessory use as defined into, and so forth. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Next item. Or rather, to be more appropriate, does anybody else have anything to say about any of these other issues?
I have a few questions for the appeals section.
Thank you. All right, stand by.
This is an administrative thing, Ann, is that what I hear you saying?
Well,
Because a lot of it is
administrative,
administrative.
and also as far as there's really no procedure for the public hearing
All right, hang on.
for either the Tree Ordinance Commission or the Board of the Appeals to the Board of Commissioners.
Okay, would you
'Cause
want to go
that's-
through these things?
Yeah, I'd like to preface it by saying, the reason why I'm bringing this up about, there's nothing basically in here about the procedures for a public hearing. It is written in the code for the planning commission for their hearings, and also for the Board of Adjustment and the commissioners. So I really suggest that it's put in here.
Okay,
As
so there
far
needs to
as
be a
the-
provision
As far as.
for a public hearing
yeah,
process.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, line 225.
Yep.
A written notice of appeal must be filed with the Tree Ordinance Commission within 30 days of the date. I suggest that's changed to at least 30 days. Because, and this goes back to the publishing of a public notice with the newspapers.
I'm good with it. Within at least 30 days.
Now, just take out within.
Commission at least 30 days, okay. Thank you.
Okay, and then in the same sentence, it says, 30 days of the date of the final decision. Whose final decision?
I'm sorry?
Whose final decision?
It should be the decision that's being appealed, that's the basis for the appeal.
But whose decision is being appealed?
Hang on a second, let me read that.
Wouldn't it always be mine?
Well, it needs to be put in there.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay,
Of the
then-
city official decision. You with me?
Well, wouldn't it be the city arborist?
I can change that. I was trying to give us some wiggle room there. Okay, city arborist. Gene's not jumping up and down.
No, it's a good point.
Okay,
The arborist is the only one
okay.
that has decision
Okay.
in here.
Okay, then down to line 235, it
Yep.
says, "The city arborist on behalf of the Tree Ordinance Commission shall mail blah, 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 blah." It's not the city arborist on behalf of the Tree Ordinance Commission.
Okay,
It's just the city arborist.
all right, so.
Wait, I don't mail anything. Where are we? Sorry, I think
And
you got my
and that- And
attention.
that's another point.
Wait,
See,
Yeah.
where are we?
that's another point that
A2.
needs to be made too. The city arborist does nothing with the mailings, does nothing with the public notices or
Okay.
anything like that.
So the city. How's that?
So who,
All of that is generated out of my office.
Yeah, so
Okay.
if I
You
simply
may-
say,
You may just.
the
look-
city
The city-
shall,
the city.
where am I? 235, excuse me. The
city.
city shall file a written response to the notice of appeal. The city arborist, the city.
Yeah.
Hang on. Shall mail. Okay, so
Yes.
I'm eliminating on behalf of the Tree Ordinance Commission.
Right.
All right, next.
Let's see here. Okay, line 238. You have commission shall then set a reasonable time for a hearing. What's a reasonable time?
7:30, 7:45, huh?
See that's where the procedures need to come in.
Yeah.
I can,
Well, how about just set a time? Can we set a time?
generally how it's done is 30 days prior to a meeting for the, I'm gonna use the Board of Adjustment as an example.
Yeah, well, indeed, that's what
30 days prior to a meeting is
Julie
when-
and Sandy both used the Board of Adjustment as a model for creating this language. So,
But it's not in here.
I get it, I understand, so go.
Okay, so anyway, 30 days prior to a Board of Adjustment meeting, hearing, all information must be submitted, applications, supporting documents. Within that period of time, I must have at least 15 days prior to the hearing for the public notice to be published on the board down here,
Okay.
and also published in the newspapers. And that's where you need to put that in here.
Okay. Have you
So
got
I
a,
can give you the information, when I get back to my desk.
well, wait a second, have you got a reference to the specific provision, excuse me, specific provision in 270 that identifies, it delineates that?
Offhand, I don't know what it is. It's 270. I'm gonna say 46.
Well, hang on, I'm
no,
gonna see if I can
that's
help you here. I'm gonna
With
see
Board
if
of
I can help
Adjustment,
you.
is that what you're looking for?
Yeah. Because I want to find out about public hearing too. All right, appeals, boom.
No reason to be original for that, just copy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I'm
I
looking
guess
for.
it's- yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yep, yep. Cut and paste.
Well, and it says the Board of Adjustment shall fix a reasonable time for the hearing.
No, I'm asking what is
You're
your
thinking this-
definition of a reasonable time?
Yeah, well, then it goes on to say at least 15 days' notice of the
That's
time and
for-
place of the hearing.
That's for the actual public notice itself,
Yeah,
because
But the
there's
date-
also a deadline for the time frame
sure.
between that 30 days and the 15 days for me to be able to get the ads into the newspapers because of their deadlines.
Right.
That's what, that's
You
why
have an
it's 30
advanced
That's
time.
why it's 30 days out.
Yeah. So can you pull up 270, 73?
Not on this computer.
If I say we're gonna adopt the language.
Now, the only thing different is we do not do a mailing to property owners within 200 feet.
Right.
We do a regular mailing and a certified mailing to the subject property owner.
The appellants
Yes.
and the parties to the, I mean, we can adopt that sort of language, which parallels, is everybody with me on this?
Yep.
Because we're gonna have to put that into some kind of, if we're gonna create a motion here, that's gotta be in there. And indeed, and just to respond to your point about a hearing before, this also addresses the issue of a hearing. So I think we'll kill two birds with one stone by making the change to conform with what the Board of Adjustment is doing.
You can use Board of Adjustment as a template
Yeah.
for what you need to do for this.
Right. Okay, other points?
Yep, on line 248.
Oh, hang on a second, let me make a note here. That was 238, right? The last,
Yep.
So, adopt language of BOA 270.73. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, on line 248, you're referencing 30 days following the hearing. I would put in there either public or appeal hearing. You can list either one.
All right.
Public.
Set forth its decision in writing within 30 days following
It could be the public hearing.
the public hearing. I'm with you. And then,
Okay, then on line 249, the decision, says on which the decision is based and shall be sent by first-class mail to all parties and be posted in City Hall. We don't post decisions.
so the Board of Adjustment simply
Like it could be-
announces its decision.
Mhm. A decision is written, and then that's placed in the minute books.
Yeah, that's something that both Sandy and Julie wanted to go beyond. They wanted something more formalized, I guess you'd
Well,
say.
wouldn't it be something to be able to do all of that?
Well, I'm not
Like when
suggesting
you
that we
get- when
need
you
to
get
post,
to the zoning,
I'm
to
not
do your
suggesting we need to
tree,
post it on the board.
to do it all at one, add it into the code at one time. Instead of doing this piecemeal for the tree ordinance, and then you go into the zoning ordinance where you also wanna have their decisions done. That would have to be added to the zoning ordinance. Then you got the planning commission in their section for section, chapter 236.
There, yep.
It would then have to be added there also.
So, well,
That could be, I mean,
it's
if we
other
don't
matters,
have it
it's
here.
other matters on this thing here.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
so, all right, here's what I'm gonna do for you, Ann. Hang on a second. Okay. Hang on, is it getting cold?
I am. It was too hot last time, now I'm too cold.
Oops. Just ran out of battery.
Okay. So what I'm intending to do is to, when we get to issues of concern, I'm gonna address your issue as though it were mine, okay, in the form of a dissent that identifies the shortcomings of the way this is provided on line 249.
Okay.
And consideration by the Board of Commissioners should be given to consolidating or creating a consolidated chapter that addresses the appeals process as it affects the Planning Commission, the Board of Adjustment, and this Tree Ordinance Commission. Okay? Does that sound okay? All right. Next.
Line 257, it says number 2, hearing, that should be appeal hearing.
Okay. I'm with you. All right.
I'm okay, I'm just chilling.
Okay, line 260,
Yep.
says the Board of Commissioners shall provide public notice of the hearing. Same thing there, there's no procedure there.
Ay, 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 ay.
And that's something that really should be put in.
Enunciated. All right, I'm gonna have to add that as a dissent issue. 250, 260. It's pretty cumbersome. All right. All right, Ann, I'm gonna give you 2 more. No.
Actually, I only have 3.
Oh, okay, I'll give you 3.
Line 267, where it says a written submission of not more than 10 pages.
Yes?
If you're talking about on the record and I have a submission that is 100 pages, I have to provide that. So I would not put in there, I would just put in a written submission and leave out of
Okay.
not more
Is
than
that
10
not
pages.
something that was in the Board of Adjustments?
No.
Okay. All right, so shall provide a written submission
To the Board of
to the Board of
Commissioners.
Commissioners. Okay,
And then down on line 270, you have the same thing again. That should be taken out.
gotcha. So submission of another party to the appeal.
Yeah, because if it's on the
To
record,
the Board
I
of-
must,
All
I
right.
must provide to the commissioners what the
All right, wait a second,
actual
wait a
record
second, wait a
is.
second. May provide additional written submission in response to any original submission or other of another party to the appeal to the Board of Committee. Okay, all right, last one.
And then on line 271,
Yep.
it says, all of the parties to the appeal not later than 7 days prior to the scheduled appeal hearing.
Yep,
I would change that to 10 days.
okay. You got it. Okay,
And I think that's pretty much it for me.
all right, thank you. All right, we're gonna whip through this, guys.
You ready
So-
for a motion?
I'm gonna ask for a motion and a second. To transmit the draft comprehensive tree and landscape ordinance, which was posted to today's meeting as a support document and includes certain changes that were adopted by the committee at today's meeting. May I have a motion?
Can I have a question first?
Yes, you may.
I was thinking perhaps it might be a reasonable approach to modify this submission today with all the things we talked about today and improved, put in there. Send it to the members for review in 10 days. Give them 5 days to give you back the review of their, the draft of their dissent, and then have a special meeting for the sole purpose of voting it to the commission and sending it off to the commission.
Okay.
I like it. I like
Did
it.
I hear a yes over there?
You can do that.
Okay.
That would make it easier than you trying to figure out all this stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. I agree.
Thank you, council.
I agree.
That's fine with me. And so let's take a moment and see who's gonna be where when.
Make sure we do it in time enough for the commission to get it on their agenda also.
Are you talking about for the 20th?
Well, not for this month, because I'm not gonna get it for this month.
Yeah. I can do a report to the commissioners on the 20th and say that we may have a meeting before the 20th. It's just that I'm not gonna have a document to give them on the 20th. But in terms of calendar opportunities, what do you look like in the next, how about next Wednesday? Just
Looking
throwing that out at you.
Wednesday, the
Are you gonna
11th.
have time to get the
Hell no.
amended version of this? Rick?
Well, I mean, make it work for you.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I'm sticking with Wednesday, so that would be like the 18th, which is 2 days before their meeting.
Oh, okay. So that's
Which is the
2
18th?
weeks from today.
Yeah. Does the 18th work?
Yeah.
Does that work for you?
Yeah, that's fair.
9 o'clock?
Good.
You gonna be back in,
I won't be in the office on
West?
the 18th. No, I'll be in Dover training.
that's not good.
I mean,
It's
you
not
could
exciting.
communicate to us.
Well, you're gonna get a
You
copy
know,
of
you're
this.
gonna get a copy.
But it should be restricted to just to vote on this thing, so we don't get into a long drawn out session.
Exactly.
Well, would we include some language for maintenance?
Well, if you can get it from Liz and put it in there and, we'll try.
I would suggest we just do what we,
What we did today
All right,
and put a
okay,
note
okay, okay,
regarding
okay.
that.
Okay.
if somebody wants to add that as the
Okay.
consent, is fine.
Would you prefer to,
It's okay, go ahead.
if we're just gonna vote, we could meet at 10.
Oh,
Just saying,
sure.
just saying,
Yeah,
instead of
10
9.
o'clock, okay.
I know Jean prefers
I
10.
got it. Okay, I will send you an email, Ann.
Okay, what's the date?
It is Wednesday, November, March the 18th at 10 a.m.
Is the room free?
Yep.
Okay.
Let's say 10 to 12.
It's a long vote.
Yeah, 10 to 11.
Well,
10 to 10:15.
please. I mean, hey, we're now concluding the first hour. Yeah, it's 3 hours in, that's correct. LSC meeting, okay,
We'll do 10 to 12 to be safe,
yeah. All right. Well, I'll get whatever I'm gonna get out to you as soon as I can. Now, having said that, I would like to spend another moment or two talking about the memo, which I'll have to think about it a little bit more, but ideally, it's not gonna change substantially based on what we just decided.
You don't need me for the memo, do you? That's more your committee.
Yeah.
No, but I do need you to have a further meeting, maybe with,
To talk about
Sturgis.
maintenance.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, you can just email me. or
So
call.
what do you look like next week?
Ran out of battery. I can't tell you
Oh,
right now.
okay.
Apparently, it only lasts for 3 hours.
I'll send you an email.
Yeah, but I do know
But
that.
I'm thinking maybe Wednesday of next week?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, because the week when you guys, the 18th, those middle of that week, I'm out for training.
Gotcha.
In,
Oh, okay.
in the illustrious
Okay.
Dover area.
Well, we're just gonna vote anyway. Right.
All right.
Should be so. So, what
Well, there's, the
So-
two versions we have are yours and then my kind of
Yeah,
suggestions.
so what I'm, do I have a violations thing in this? What am I doing here?
If you've got mine, you do. Yeah, that's mine. The last page is, yeah, if you go to the very last page of
Yeah,
that,
no, I got it.
you'll find it. It should be there.
All right. Thank you, Liz.
Yeah, your language is included also. so-
Yeah, hang on,
It's all in there.
hang on.
Okay, okay.
I gotta figure out what I'm doing here. All right. So, what I had conveyed to Sturgis concerning this, did you give him one?
I did.
Concerning this revised or suggested changes to the memo that I'm proposing to send to the Board of Commissioners. She added she added a provision, violations and penalties. And if you're willing to do this, I would like to change what you suggested by eliminating the last sentence. And just go with the first two
On
sentences.
violations and penalties.
Yeah, which I'm gonna read now.
Oh, sure.
Violation, it's number 11, violations and penalties. Expands penalties to apply to all violations to correct this omission in the current code. Current code only describes fines attached to removing a tree without a permit. A specific fee of $1,200 per tree, or twice its replacement price, is imposed for protected trees destroyed in violation of the code.
Okay, I mean, the last.
Now,
Yeah.
You don't wanna change this memo because of the manner in which we're gonna
well,
propose this?
you tell me.
And if you send this to them without the revised,
No, I'm not gonna, this does not go to them until
okay, till we're ready.
we
to-
make a vote.
Okay, good, okay. good.
Yeah, but I mean, is there something that's in the initial part of it that you see conflicts?
No, mainly I was just looking at the fact that we
Yeah,
dealt with
no, it's
what
not
you
going
said
anywhere.
already.
It's not going anywhere.
Okay.
However, I will note for the record that I'm going to add language based on what Ann has suggested to identify that in addition to some of the issues that Susan is suggesting under other matters, that we add a sentence or two that addresses the appeals process and consideration by the Board of Commissioners to maybe creating a new specific chapter in the code that
Well,
address.
that's not what I was saying.
No.
What I was saying was, if you're going to address the appeals part of this, it should be addressed at the same time as the appeals for the Board of Adjustment, the appeals for the Planning Commission, and for the Board of Commissioners. Not that it's a separate chapter in the
I
code.
see.
It'll still remain in the individual codes,
Oh, okay.
but they should all be
Consistent.
consistent with
Okay.
each other as to the process.
I understand. Okay, scratch that. Thank you.
Did you, Hoyt, I misunderstood you when you were looking at violation and penalties. Did you want to,
I'm just eliminating your last sentence, is all I'm doing.
and can I ask why you didn't want to say, because that's a brand new thing that we're doing, is applying civil penalties. They're not in the current code at all. That's a pretty big deal, I think.
Okay.
Let me look. I mean,
No, okay.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, that's
But-
okay. I'll add it, I'm not gonna.
Okay.
So,
I mean, that is a really
So,
big
all right.
deal.
but then, let me just, so the additional sentence will be included, and it reads, for consistency with the city's overall code.
Mhm. I mean, that may or may not be accurate.
don't
I
like
mean, you may not
overall,
like
no,
that, but, you know,
I'm
I
sorry.
guess I was just kind of saying.
For
I know
consistency with the city
City's code,
code,
the city code.
civil penalties shall be applied in addition to other, okay, shall be
Mhm.
applied in addition to other enforcement
Sure.
actions. Sorry.
No, that's good, that's good. Did you like my other suggestions?
No.
No. That's short and sweet and to the point.
Yeah, no, I mean, my point to you in my email was,
Uh-huh.
let's keep it, we're only giving them highlights here, okay? That's why I didn't want that
Uh-huh.
sentence in there,
Oh, okay.
okay? But I'm
But-
gonna go
yeah.
there with you. So you need to, it's a little give and take, so now you need to give me something in
No,
return,
I mean,
so,
these are,
okay.
I don't know.
All right, so let me finish this meeting.
Sure.
Let me finish this meeting. And so, and for purposes of completing the record, we need to have a copy of Liz's first page, which I will describe generally as tree maintenance. What else is there? I got lots of loose documents around here. I had your notes dated March the 1st. Is that adequate? Okay.
mhm.
And where am I? And Jean's revisions, suggested revisions to the comprehensive tree and landscape ordinance.
Okay, do I have those?
I'm sorry?
From Gene? Do I have those?
Do you have that?
I don't think you do, Hans.
I don't think I do.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
All right.
I don't think that got sent to you.
Okay, let's see, I don't have a hard copy I can give you right now. But I will email it to you right now.
Okay. And then I will go ahead and embed it in the agenda.
Thank you. Hang on one second, guys. Well, let me just finish the meeting, then I'll email it to you. Okay, so we have just set a meeting for Wednesday, March 18 at 10 a.m. I'm going to continue with what I've got in my agenda for today's meeting with another meeting, which I'm scheduling for, again, the first Wednesday of the month, which just happens to be April Fool's Day, April 1st, also at 10 a.m.
And maybe we can actually work on something else.
And we will work on something. Just to turn the page up by a corner, I have, well, good news and bad news. The good news is I have a record of 6 to 8 issues that have come before the Law Oversight Committee since its inception. The bad news is the computer where all that information is stored died, and the Apple Store said it is in fact dead. So I may have to wing some of these things, but the purpose of that April 1st meeting will be to put some of these other issues on the table, okay, to discuss them. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to talk about them. This should not be a lengthy meeting, because once we do that, then we will decide what I will then take to the Board of Commissioners to say, here are some issues, what do you have in mind? Okay? So that's what that's all about. So, does anybody have any comments good of the order? Okay, 12:13, I'm gonna adjourn this meeting.